Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Deeper Dive presented by SuperDraft.com. I'm Dave Loughran. With me, Adam Scherer. It's been so long, I can't even get your name right. Not that I ever did to begin with. We got an 11-game slate today. Man, it's a good day to be alive. Watching a little Sixers basketball. Ben Simmons knocking down threes. Yeah, it's happening. Guy's about to triple-double in a 40-minute game. I'm loving it right now. Got a little baseball coming up. 11-game slate. Adam, we're back, man. Like today, we're really back because we've got more than just one or two baseball games. We got a full slate. This is real opening day.
Yeah, really excited for it. Josh and I were talking a little bit after the show this morning that once we did the show, it really felt like it was real and it's finally back and you know it's exciting to be able to play again.
Yeah, and yesterday, spending a good hour on two games, it's going to be a lot different today because we got a lot to jump into. 11 games, 22 different teams. On the Deeper Dive, we try and break everything down. If you're new to Awesemo, if you're new to the Deeper Dive, welcome. You'll see how we do things in just a minute. So I say, I don't know, I think we probably, with 11 games to tackle, we just dive right into this and get it started. What do you think?
Yep, agreed.
All right, so we've got Philly, we've got Miami. Philly, a pretty big favorite. Sandy Alcantara on the mound. All-star last year. All-star last year. It doesn't mean he's not a good pitcher, but from a fantasy sense, maybe not the highest upside guy. 10% swinging strike rate, 18% K rate on the season. And then Aaron Nola is somebody who had a lot of ups and downs, Adam. Let's start with him. Just stretches where he looked fantastic and other areas where he really didn't. He's somebody that can come out there and rack up a lot of strikeouts. He does one very good thing, and that is getting called strikes at one of the highest clips in the league. But he also had some home run issues last year. The Miami Marlins, though, with 3.8 implied run total today. Opposite that, the Philadelphia Phillies are at 5.3. Pretty big favorites here at home.
Yeah, I think it's a good spot for Nola, obviously going up against Miami. You mentioned the low implied run total. A bit more formidable lineup for the Marlins than we saw most of last season. You have Aguilar in there. You have Dickerson. Harold Ramirez showed some promise at the plate last year. Brian Anderson's not bad. VR's not bad. So it is a better lineup. Also, towards the bottom where normally you can kind of take advantage and rack up some strikeouts. In addition to obviously there not being a pitcher, you have low strikeout guys in Francisco Cervelli and Miguel Rojas. So I think that drives down Nola's projection a little bit. I was actually a little bit surprised when I was making lineups this afternoon that Nola projected a bit lower than I was expecting him to on the show this morning. So I didn't get to quite as much as I expected, but I'll be happy with whatever Nola I get. I don't think that the price tag on him, especially at 9,100 on DraftKings, I don't think he's overpriced. It really just comes down to roster construction and can I get there? And there's obviously a lot of pitchers around him that are similar.
What about the speed factor here? Aaron Nola last season allowed, I can't find it. The stolen base. Only 7 stolen bases last year. I think that's helpful knowing that the seasons before that, 21 and 17. The reason I bring this up is it comes down. Pitchers mostly have the bulk of control over what happens on the base paths, but having JT Realmuto behind the plate is going to be really helpful. So I do think that is another plus here, being able to hold runners because you got a couple speed guys. You got Jonathan VR at the top of the lineup, pretty significant. So like you said, less Nola than you expected. When it comes to pricing, he's up in the top 5 on DraftKings behind Verlander, Bieber, Berrios, Giolito. Actually surprised he's behind Berrios. But yeah, so is this a spot, like you said, you liked him earlier, but then once more information, once more projections came out, you kind of pumped the brakes a bit?
I don't know if I'd even say that. I mean, I still like him. I'm
just getting less.
Yeah, I'm just not really getting as much as I expected. It's not something that I feel confident in. Like I'm not looking at it saying like, oh yeah, I don't need Aaron Nola or anything like that. I would love to get more if I can, but it's just, I think pretty much just a factor of there's a lot of good pitching on this slate with it being opening day for most of these teams. And also from a roster construction standpoint, of course, in tournaments, you're going to prioritize hitting. So it looks like in a lot of my lineups, I'm kind of just like hammering that 7K price range on DraftKings at SP2, which I didn't really think would be the case this morning, but I guess there's not quite as much hitter value as I anticipated. So it seems like I'm kind of just taking risk there and kind of spreading it out amongst several of those pitchers, and it's costing me some exposure to Nola.
Yeah, and interestingly, when you look at the top stacks tool, when you look at what stacks are projected to be the highest owned, there are only a couple that are going to be really up there. Boston primarily coming in around 17% ownership. So that's high. Outside of that, there's nothing egregious, especially on an 11-game slate. So we'll get into all of that, but let's talk about pitch or hitting first, unless you have anything to say on Alcantara against this Phillies team. But I can say this. Phillies team last year, really a colossal disappointment. This is still, and it's hard to recount how many times or recall how many times you and I said this, but like, no matter how often they struggled, it was still not easy to roster pitchers against them because of the potential from top to bottom. They did get McCutchen back. You've got Rhys Hoskins, Bryce Harper, Real Muto, Gregorius, Gene Segura. So they've added some bodies. They've added some decent bats that don't strike out at time. It's a pretty threatening lineup for somebody like Alcantara, who puts the ball in play quite a lot.
Yeah, and a park downgrade for him as well. Pretty disappointing that
in late July, by the way. This is right. Opening day in March 28th.
Right. I think that's something, obviously if you're just using projections, it's factored in. But if you're not, like if you're hand building or whatever, thinking through the slate, keep in mind that the ball's going to carry a lot better in most of these games than it normally does at the beginning of the season. So, we're jumping right into the home run months with the season starting now. So I'm pretty disappointed that Jay Bruce is hitting 7th. I thought he was a really good value if he was hitting towards the middle of that lineup, because Alcantara's biggest weakness is left-handed power. I think it's a great spot, obviously, for Harper. Didi Gregorius is a good shortstop play. Those two stand out as one-offs for me, but Philly stacks are firmly in play as well.
Yeah, very much so. Alcantara struck out lefties at a 15.8% clip last season. Overall, struck batters out at 18%. He's not a bad pitcher at all. He's just somebody that when he's putting this many balls in play, it can get kind of ugly. 41% ground balls against lefties, against righties, 48%. So, there's something to be said here. Not a ridiculously high fly ball rate, and you're going to need to prevent fly balls today at Citizens Bank Park. It's very humid in Philadelphia. What about bats? Anything else? Like you said, Philly stacks in play. Anything else you want to touch on here? Any good value? Any individual guys?
Not really that I see. From the Miami side, I would point to VR, except for everything that you said. I pointed it out this morning too, that it seems like Real Muto has helped out Nola. VR will still try and run, so there is still upside there, but it's not a great running spot. And for example, you have Gregorius for $200 less on the other side of this game.
All right, so let's move on then. We got 11 games to touch on. It's hard not to get caught up in certain spots. By the way, I don't think anyone else will care about this, but you'll find it interesting. Not going to make a conversation of it. Domantas Sabonis just left the bubble with a significant foot injury, so not good for the Indiana Pacers. I think you can tell I want basketball here pretty quickly. Now, I'm thrilled to have baseball back. That's a pretty big piece of information. Anyway, and completely irrelevant to the show. Cleveland, Kansas City, Shane Bieber, really a massive coming out party last year, a great season, top 10 strikeout rate, just absolutely raked in a ton of spots, but he did go out and have some significant home run trouble against lefties, 1.6 home runs per 9, 1.3 home runs per 9 overall. So when you look at Bieber, he's still an elite level ace, but he does give up home runs. And on the other side, how many times have you and I rostered Danny Duffy just hoping the strikeouts are there and the walks and the home runs aren't? I, again, can't count the amount of times that we've ran him out there at a dirt cheap price tag. Sometimes it works. Sometimes we got egg on our face.
Yeah, and I think it's a really brutal matchup for him. I am getting a little bit on DraftKings just because he's cheap. And like I said, I'm using a lot of those guys. But he strikes out a much lower percentage against right-handed hitters. He gives up a lot of power to right-handed hitters. And there's nothing but right-handed hitters, mostly with a ton of power, in this lineup for Cleveland. The only hitter in the lineup that has an ISO below 192 against left-handed pitching since the start of 2018 is Cesar Hernandez leading off. Every other hitter in this lineup has plenty of power. And Duffy last year to righties, a 209 expected ISO, only a 20% strikeout percentage. So I think a really, really dangerous spot for him. I do like the Indians if their ownership comes down a bit. Right now, we have them being underowned on DraftKings. It looks like our top stack tool updated. So if that does hold to be the case, I think I'll start getting to a lot more Cleveland than I had earlier.
if this does hold, like you said, I think I end up really liking this Cleveland team today. Right now, you're looking at basically twice, Adam, the top stack probability of the actual ownership share. So
yeah, I'm really excited to see that.
Big. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm really excited to see that because they were one of the teams that I liked the most looking at it. But I was disappointed when I ran crunches earlier and didn't really get to them because of how we had ownership projected.
Listen, Danny Duffy's a strange pitcher. He's not horrible, but he's just never really put it together. And he had an xFIP north of 5 against righties last season. These are some rough numbers, man. Near 200 ISO, 1.5 home runs per 9. Danny Duffy will struggle. And that, by the way, that's with a BABIP of 276. So it's not like he got knocked around undeservingly. It's a very strange spot. He will give up fly balls quite a bit. Cleveland can come out here and do some serious damage. Remember all the stuff about Cleveland being so much better at home than they were on the road? You remember that?
Yep.
You think it's strictly park? You think maybe they were getting into some Houston Astros shenanigans, little sign stealing action? Or do you think having no fans in attendance will make a difference? Because I feel like baseball is that one sport where whether you have fans or not, if you were markedly better at home or on the road, I'm not sure how much of a difference that can really make.
Yeah, I think it's probably a combination of just seeing the ball well there, but also probably some other stuff going on.
And you're not talking about fans in attendance?
No.
Okay. you don't want to speculate?
I just completely didn't hear what you said either.
I said you don't want to speculate?
No, I mean before that about fans in attendance.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're saying it's not because of fans in attendance is what I'm asking. But
right.
Yeah, I like Cleveland a lot. We're going to get to a bunch of other games here, but this is a spot that they could really they could really do some serious damage. Temperature's not crazy, 78 degrees at first pitch, like 60% humidity. So nothing crazy out there in Cleveland. And there are going to be, as you'll see, some games tonight where weather should play a big role. But it's a Cleveland team that's really stacked. Now, it's also a Cleveland team that could just get blanked because a bunch of these guys are, I hate to say hot and cold guys, but also like a Franmil Reyes is the type of guy that could strike out 3 times in a row, or he could go deep with a double and a single as well. So there's a bunch of power in here. Domingo Santana, Adam, is another perfect example of a guy who can just do a ton of damage or can be completely blanked. And yes, that's any player, obviously, but these guys are pretty volatile hitters, which is why I kind of like them more today. What are you thinking about Bieber and the rest of this game?
I think that Bieber, I really like him as a pitcher. I think it'll be pretty tough for me to get to a lot of him, especially on DraftKings, just because of the way pricing breaks down. Justin Verlander is not that much more expensive than him. And then you just have that whole tier of pitchers around 9K that not all in the best matchups, but just a lot of talent there, and saving that $1,400 or so can make a pretty big difference in your lineup. So I do think it's a pretty good spot for him. His biggest flaw is left-handed power, and there's not really much of that at all in this lineup. Only 3 left-handed hitters. Nicky Lopez doesn't count as far as power goes. Alex Gordon has some, and then Mondesi more of a speed guy and a gap guy. So no true left-handed power hitters for Bieber to deal with. Is definitely a plus if you can get to them.
Yeah, Royals, by the way, one of these teams last year that had a very, very rough time out of the bullpen. One of the highest xFIPs in the league. Double-digit walk rate, one of the lower strikeout rates in baseball. So that's another nice thing, knowing that in the event that, and they used to have a great bullpen, only a couple of years removed, but in the event that Danny Duffy does go down early, gets the hook early, it's not as difficult a spot. And I know you're someone that's a big-time proponent of, not proponent, but you push this a lot, that in today's day and age, bullpens on so many teams are so strong that once relievers do come in, it's very difficult to get that same type of upside in terms of run production as you would against some starters.
Yeah, and it's something this season with a shortened season, I think maybe you could see that a little bit more even because every game is worth almost 2% of the total season. So I think maybe you see even more innings or a higher percentage of innings given to the good relievers.
Hit that thumbs up, whether you're new or you've been with us for a while. It helps a ton. And if you are new, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, because we got new content coming out all the time here. the Awesemo YouTube channel. Anything else on this one?
No.
All right, let's talk Cubs and Milwaukee Brewers. So the Milwaukee Brewers, is that a new logo? It's got to be, right? Did you notice?
It's like their logo
throwback.
It's a throwback.
Yeah, it's just it keeps throwing me off. I've seen it a bunch. It's just not the one that I'm used to seeing.
Yeah, anyway, it's not the M.
Yeah, the Cubs are minus 116 money line favorites. A pretty close game from a Vegas perspective. Kyle Hendricks on the mound and Brandon Woodruff, who, let's actually start with him, Adam. Last year, Brandon Woodruff had some really, really solid outings. This is one of those guys that went out and racked up strikeouts at a pretty high clip. 29% K rate for Woodruff last season. Did a good job of preventing home runs. There were a lot of really positive aspects of Brandon Woodruff's game on the mound last season.
Yeah, there were, and he's one of the pitchers in that mid-tier price range that I will be using quite a bit of tonight. It's certainly a tough matchup against the Cubs. It's a quality offense. You have low strikeout guys in Rizzo and Hayward and Nico Horner towards the bottom of that order. But Woodruff is a really high strikeout guy, and I think that the salary clearly accounts for the matchup here. Last year, he struck out 29% of hitters, regardless of side of the plate. He did a better job, much better job, limiting power to righties. But it wasn't like he gave up a ton to lefties either. And it's a pretty balanced lineup here for the Cubs. Also, the highest ground ball percentage on the slate last season for Woodruff. So a better chance at positive outcomes when the ball is put in play, although obviously you're still hoping for those strikeouts. So I think that at his salary, I'll be taking some shots on him in tournaments.
Yeah, me too, no question. And there's no wind blowing out at Wrigley. As a matter of fact, it looks to be blowing in at 7 miles per hour, so that's good. Temperatures here seem all right, low 80s, high 70s, but as long as the wind's not blowing out, this is a markedly better park for a pitcher in these conditions than Miller Park is. Roof or not, like Miller Park is a home run hitting haven. So I have no problem with Woodruff being at Wrigley Field. What about Kyle Hendricks on the other side going up against the Milwaukee Brewers, who, you look at this lineup and they are no doubt going to be a scary team at times. Christian Yelich, I don't know what Ryan Braun has left in the tank. Justin Smoke. I guess this is another one of those teams where there are a couple guys that are really impressive, but the rest of it, what do you say about the K rates here for this new look Milwaukee lineup?
Yeah, I think that the strikeouts are going to be lacking, at least in the top couple spots in the order. We know that Eric Sogard is an absolute nightmare to roster pitchers against. He just drives up pitch counts. He doesn't really strike out. Christian Yelich, a 21.4% strikeout percentage. Then you get into some Ks with Keston Hiura at about 30%. We know Justin Smoke will strike out, Braun will strike out, Garcia will strike out. So once you can get past Sogard and Yelich, there are some strikeouts in this particular lineup for Milwaukee. But Hendricks really just isn't a strikeout pitcher. And with as many high upside arms as there are on this slate, I don't really see myself going there. 17% strikeout percentage against righties, 24% against lefties last year for Hendricks. Most of his upside comes from if he can limit damage and just get deep into a game. The salary is fine, but I just think you're getting a better ceiling from someone like Brandon Woodruff or going to some guys that are a little bit more expensive.
Yeah, and look, Hendricks does a couple things very well. He does not walk batters, but he also doesn't really strike them out. Only 20% last season, which in today's baseball is not going to cut it. But yeah, He's a good overall pitcher with a 4% walk rate. He's just not a great fantasy pitcher. He's not someone, though, that I'm in love with rostering batters against either, Adam. Like, if you wanted to make the argument that a low-owned Christian Yelich is in play, I'm literally never going to argue that with the platoon advantage, super expensive. But anytime Christian Yelich is low, is he low-owned right now? I haven't looked at it since we updated it. Probably.
He has to be.
He's got to be, right? Yeah. He's at like 6%. So actually a little higher than I thought. But point being, with those type of players, with the Yeliches of this world, the Trouts, I'll play them against anyone if they're getting no ownership. But I don't know if there's anyone I'm particularly in love with here from the Milwaukee Brewers. How about you from either side of this one?
Yeah, nothing I'm really in love with. I don't think the pricing is particularly great for either side. Earlier today, I was getting some Milwaukee stacks, but with the change in the top stack tool, I think I'll lose some of that.
All right, let's keep it moving here. 11 games to get through. We're through 3, but now we get to Boston and Baltimore. This is one we'll inevitably have to spend a decent amount of time on because right now the Boston Red Sox, with the updated top stack tool, have an ownership share of 18%. That's 10% higher than the next closest team. So they have the highest top stack potential, and this is why this is such a valuable tool. But their ownership is almost double that right now, Adam. They are in a very good spot. There's no denying that. They have a run total that opened at 6. I think it's at 5.8 now. The Baltimore Orioles are running out Tommy Malone, the lefty, and it looks like he probably should have called out sick, but here he is at 7:30, toeing the rubber against a pretty difficult Boston team that has the highest run total of any team on this slate.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing, I guess, working for Malone, aside from the fact that he's 4K, is that this isn't
no
quite...
fans there to boo.
There's no Mookie Betts there. I mean, it's just a really tough spot. Obviously it's not quite as good a Boston lineup as we've gotten in the past, but still very, very formidable. And it's I think part of the reason that you're seeing so much ownership go there is it's a combination of a great spot against Tommy Malone and a bad Baltimore bullpen, but also really favorable pricing. Tommy Malone's not a lights out lefty against left-handed hitters. So you don't write off a $3,800 Benintendi. I like the idea of paying up for Devers to be contrarian, because I think people kind of stay away in the lefty-lefty matchup. But JD Martinez clearly underpriced. Kevin Pillar is batting 5th and inexpensive. You have Jose Peraza batting 9th, but sub 3K on a team with almost a 6 implied run total. There's some value there. Michael Chavis batting 7th, I think, is a really good value at 3K. So it's a really good combination of value and upside, which is why there's so much ownership going here. I think that if you are going to stack them, it's pretty imperative to be pairing them with really low owned stacks, so that you can still differentiate, because you're going to be battling a really high percentage of the field if you go there.
Taking a look at Boston ownership right now, it speaks pretty heavily to your point that not only is the pricing really favorable, on DraftKings specifically, but some of these guys that are left-handed might not be getting as much love as they should. Benintendi's up there. But Rafael Devers is at right now 5% projected ownership against Tommy Malone. One thing that people forget sometimes, Adam, is yes, he's going up against the lefty, but how many opportunities could he see with runners on base, right? How long is Tommy Malone going to be in this game? There's more than just, the lefty-lefty matchup against Malone. The opportunities to knock in runs, have runners on base. There's a lot more working for Devers than just the fact that he doesn't have the platoon advantage.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, last year Malone struck out a high percentage of lefties, but he also gave up a ton of power. So in addition to, there's going to be guys on base, he still should be able to hit for power against Malone. He should be great against whoever comes in after Malone. Obviously he is expensive, but I think that it's pretty nice when you can get relatively lower ownership on the number 3 hitter on a team like this.
Do you have any interest in pitching for as far as Nathan Ivaldi goes?
Yeah, I do.
Day pitcher.
Yeah, he's one of the guys that I'm getting to in that 7K range, just because it helps me fill out my lineups. It's a pretty good matchup against the Orioles. You have some strikeout upside with Nunez and Davis hitting in the middle of this order in particular. So he struck out 23% of hitters last year, lefties and righties alike. He's not great, but he does throw hard. He does have a good splitter that if he maybe throws a little bit more, he'd get more swings and misses. But ultimately, I think it's just that he's cheap enough and he's facing the Orioles.
Okay. Yeah, and that makes sense. Now, how about Baltimore Bats? Won't spend a lot of time on this. Is there any interest in Baltimore Bats? Maybe some discounted options here. Anybody that stands out to you that might be worthwhile from top to bottom?
I have a little bit, just because there's only a few teams that really look like cheap stacks top to bottom. And it seems like there's a lot of ownership going to the Cardinals and going to the Padres. the Orioles not getting nearly as much. You do have some power with guys like Austin Hayes, Anthony Santander, Nunez, potentially maybe Chris Davis. So that's certainly not a team that I'm getting a lot of, but if you are looking to do like a Verlander, Nola, or something like that, and you need a cheap stack, I think the Orioles are going to be one of the lower owned cheap stacks that aren't facing a true ace.
Yeah, and it's not like Nathan Ivaldi is a dominant, front of the rotation ace either. He's a decent pitcher, but that's kind of where this conversation ends. For anyone wondering whether most of the temperature here is high 70s, low 80s. Nothing's crazy until we get to Texas. And then St. Louis, which we'll get to shortly. We'll start now, though, with the Texas Rangers and the Colorado Rockies. So, Lance Lynn, what do you make of Lance Lynn coming off of last year's really dominant campaign? And I think it shocked a lot of people. A couple things about Lynn. He's always been way better against same-handed hitters. And for all those years he was in St. Louis, he was one of those pitchers that did have legitimate home road splits for whatever reason. I probably couldn't tell you, but he struck out 28% of batters last year, Adam, 10.6 strikeouts per 9. There were some real advancements in Lance Lynn's game last season. And I'm wondering, do we see that sustained improvement through 2020? Because he was pitching in pretty rough stadium.
Yeah, I think he is a good pitcher, and the thing that really stands out from last year is that he did a much better job of limiting power, particularly against left-handed hitters, than he had in the past. The reason that I still don't really want to roster him today is that you mentioned the overall strikeout percentage for him last year, but if you break it down and look at left-handed hitters versus right-handed hitters,
all against righties,
yeah, 21.2% of left-handed hitters, 35.7% of righties. The Rockies, the only two righties in this lineup are Trevor Story and Nolan Arenado. Yep. So I don't think that it's likely that Lynn has a great game from a strikeout standpoint. And it's not the worst Rockies lineup either. It gets pretty bad once you get to the bottom, but 1 through 5, they're pretty solid hitters. Brian McMahon has a little bit of power as well. So I think that it's a dangerous enough lineup, enough left-handed hitters that I'm not really going to get to Lynn here, although I do think he is a good pitcher.
It is shocking that he allowed 6 home runs to lefties last year.
Yeah, that had kind of always been his issue. He fixed it last year, though.
Yeah, to say the least. But yes, the splits and strikeouts against lefties and righties is huge. 36% and 21%. Not having really any righties in this lineup to go up against and hopefully pad those strikeout totals makes it difficult. Not to mention, Adam, that we're talking about 95 degrees at first pitch. We know what July and August are like at Globe Life in Arlington, Texas. It's not great for pitchers. Now, they have a retractable roof at Globe Life Park or Globe Life Field, but I'm assuming that I looked, I haven't seen anything that suggests that it's going to be closed.
Me neither. Until I see that it is, I'm assuming it's open.
Wind blowing in at 12 miles per hour, but that really never made that much of a difference here in Texas. So I don't know about you. I'm just going to assume that this is hitter-friendly conditions in Texas.
Agreed.
What are you doing with going into this Globe Life field and facing a Texas lineup of Shin-Soo Choo, Elvis Andrus, Danny Santana, my man, and the ultimate GOAT, Joey Gallo, Rogner Odor, Todd Frazier batting 6, Robinson Chirinos, Nick Solich, and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. Hey, I take a look at this Rangers lineup, and in terms of overall how threatening it is from a power perspective, outside of Gallo, sometimes Shin-Soo Choo, I don't know what Todd Frazier has left in the tank. Robinson Chirinos against righties, there's not a whole lot. You talk to us about how it looks like from a strikeout standpoint facing righties.
Yeah, so he's in 4 lefties in this lineup. It does hurt him a bit that all 4 of the lefties are in the top 5 hitters. So not the most favorable strikeout matchup there. He's somewhat expensive as well. I think that between the 2 of them, I would rather go to Marquez here. But overall, I'm just not all that interested in the pitching.
How are you feeling about hitting on either side?
I like Gallo. I think you mentioned him either right before the show or when the show started, but he's really cheap. He's only 4,400. And while I do have a ton of respect for Marquez, he allowed a 220 expected ISO last year. So that's not just the Coors Field effect to lefties. And Gallo, of course, has as much raw power as anyone in the game. So getting him at a mid 4K price tag is just giving you as much upside as you're going to get from any hitter, really.
Yep. And I think last time I looked on DraftKings Sportsbook, Joey Gallo is the leader in the clubhouse, or really the odds-on favorite, or favorite against the field would be the best way to put it, to win the home run title. I think it's a pretty wild number, but not surprising. He's very, very good, and he's got an incredible amount of power. And, anytime I can talk about Joey Gallo, I'm all for it. So 4,400, you're right. It is way too inexpensive in a spot like this, even against a good pitcher like Marquez. A lot of that good pitching will be neutralized by the fact that he has to pitch in this park. So all over Gallo here. Did you mention him at 3,500 on FanDuel?
I didn't, but that's a good price too.
Yeah, it's not bad at all. Okay, so we can wrap this one up unless you've got anything else in Colorado and Texas. Is it mostly just Gallo, or are we talking Colorado Rocky bats too?
I'm getting to some Rocky stacks. I'm getting less now that I refreshed the top stacks tool than I was earlier. But again, it's just a spot where with the Red Sox taking up so much ownership today, just spreading your exposure out to teams that have a lot of power makes a lot of sense. And that's certainly the case with the top 5 guys on the Rockies here. So they're not in my top 5, but they are a team that I expect to be over the field on.
Okay. 1 second here. We got our boy El Negro Loco saying that, okay, yeah, Globe Life Field roof will be closed today.
All right, well then that should take some it takes some away from the hitters.
Yeah, I'm not worried about Gallo, honestly. Like when he makes contact, the ball's going 450 feet anyway. And I'm not kidding. Like there are some batters where, they need all of the perfect conditions. They need to be a righty at Great American Ballpark after it rained. But with Joey Gallo, it's just not a concern of mine at all, whether the roof is open or closed. So, take that into consideration. If you're dealing with monster power guys, I wouldn't be too concerned about it. It helps them, of course, to have it open, but this isn't something that is going to get me off of someone like Joey Gallo. Now, when we talk about the White Sox and the Minnesota Twins, full disclosure, White Sox, I have them winning this division this year. I think they're going to be surprisingly good. I really like this lineup of theirs. Yoan Moncada has only improved. Jose Abreu's like a perennial 100 RBI player that doesn't get enough attention. Yasmani Grandal batting in the cleanup spot. You got him behind the dish now. Encarnacion, Eloy Jimenez, Luis Robert. Like, I don't know, man. I think this team has the potential to be very good. And we haven't talked before the show, so I don't know where you're at on somebody like Berrios, but I'm a little bit cautious when it comes to throwing pitchers out against them right now.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the White Sox should be should be a good team this year. At the very least, they'll be a really fun team to stack. Yeah. They were last year, and then now you add Yasmani Grandal and Edwin Encarnacion to a team that already has a ton of upside in terms of speed and power. So, Berrios is a decent pitcher, but I think maybe a little bit overhyped in the fantasy community. Doesn't strike out as many hitters as most pitchers that are kind of classified in the same group as him. So I think that for someone that doesn't miss quite as many bats, you're talking about pitching the contact against a lot of power here. So not a ton of ownership going to the White Sox. I think they are a high upside team. Pretty favorable pricing too on some guys. Yoan Moncada stands out to me at 4,500. I think that Grandal is a little expensive, but with catcher being a weak position, you're getting one of the best hitting catchers in the game there. So those two look like good one-offs to me. Yeah,
I'm with you. I just you'd be hard pressed to convince me that paying $9,600 for Berrios is a good idea, particularly against this White Sox lineup. $9,200 for Berrios on FanDuel. I personally am going to have a difficult time getting there. I don't imagine I'll have much, if any, Berrios. The White Sox bats, though, they are not. I was hoping they might be a little bit cheap, Brad. I was hoping they'd fly under the radar a little bit, but Like on DraftKings specifically, Encarnacion's $5K, Grandal's $4,800. These guys are all going to be pricey. And unfortunately, this is one thing that's going to suck with stacks this year. Encarnacion and Abreu both only have first base eligibility on DraftKings.
Yeah, that's frustrating. It makes it so at least on FanDuel you can get to them, but it'll be a problem on DraftKings.
They should just do like I was going to say like something with DH, but DH first base. I don't know, something to where you can play both of these guys in the same lineup.
I didn't hate the idea a couple of years ago. I thought they were going to just add a utility, but instead they replaced an outfield with utility, which I did hate. But if they just like threw a utility spot in there, it wouldn't be the worst.
Didn't they do it and then get rid of it before the regular season started?
Yeah, they did it like for spring training, and everyone lost their minds and they got rid of it.
Instead of what was it? Instead, was it just adding it so you still had
you had 2 outfielders and a utility instead of 3 outfielders.
Oh, okay. I guess I can understand that, but I don't know. I'll say this much: it's going to suck knowing that these are 2 of the biggest power guys on the team, and there are going to be nights where both of them have big games and you can't get to both, and you're just pissed because one of them has a big game, the other, and you can only play one of them.
Yeah, I was gonna say that'll be the problem because like obviously nobody can get to both, but it's just exactly. I have a great team and I played the wrong first baseman.
Yeah, exactly. So it's gonna suck, but what can you do? We're not here to talk and complain about that. We're here to keep talking baseball. So let's dive in a little bit more here. If there's anything else you want to talk about, Lucas Giolito he was one of our favorites last year, had that breakout. He made some big time adjustments and just became a extremely efficient pitcher on the mound. There was a stretch there where Lucas Giolito, not saying he was obviously, but there was a stretch where Giolito looked like the best pitcher in baseball over the course of 5 or 6 starts. How do you feel about him today? $9,500 on DraftKings, on FanDuel, $9,500 as well, going up against this Minnesota team that's running out. I think they have 5 lefties in the lineup, 4 and a switch hitter.
Yeah, I mean, really scary spot. You're just talking about a Minnesota team that, for one, they have a lot of really patient hitters that can drive up the pitch count for Giolito. And then for 2, of course, they have a ton of power, led the league in home runs last year, and then added Josh Donaldson. So I think that it's a really scary spot. If Giolito were either a little bit cheaper or this were just a different slate in terms of the pitchers available on it, I could see making an argument to just bet on low talent with Giolito and hope for the best because he's one of the most talented pitchers on the slate. But the problem that I run into is that, I mentioned earlier when we talked about the Philadelphia game, I was having trouble getting to like Aaron Nola from a roster construction standpoint. And a $9,100 Aaron Nola against the Marlins, I think, is better than a $9,500 Giolito against the Twins. So it's clearly just going to be really, really tough for me to get there. It seems like the opportunity cost is a little bit too high, in addition to the fact that it's just a brutal matchup.
Yeah, and only a 1.1 time multiplier on SuperDraft, so it's not like there's value there either. I don't know. This game to me is just a couple of one-offs for the White Sox. I don't see myself at all getting to Berrios, Giolito at that price. There's too much competition around him that I like. I guess we can close it with Minnesota bats. Any interest here in Minnesota hitters?
Not really. I mean, issues with the running game under control last year. He used to be someone where if you had any sort of speed whatsoever, you were just walking to second base. I think he only allowed like 3 stolen bases last year after changing his delivery. So that's not something that we can attack anymore.
SuperDraft.io or download it in the App Store is the sponsor of the Deeper Dive and Live Before Lock. If you haven't checked it out yet, what are you waiting for? It is a fantastic new way to play DFS without trying to recreate the wheel, without trying to get all aggressive and completely failing as we've seen so many sites do over the years. They've got a nice, simple solution that has made the game a lot of fun. Multiplier mode, no salaries. You can play anybody you want. You say that's crazy? You're wrong. It's not. Because what happens is if you roster someone like Verlander with a 1x multiplier, he scores 20, you only get 20, right? If you were to roster somebody, and I'm not advocating for this, like Ross Stripling, he had 2 times whatever he scores. Nathan Ivaldi has a 2x multiplier today. That would be a better example. If Ivaldi goes out there in a pretty decent matchup and gives you 19, 20 fantasy points. There it is, 38, 40 fantasy points because he's got a 2x multiplier. So if you wanted to play everyone on DraftKings, of the available roster spots that was priced at the top, your Yelich's, your Mike Trouts, your Verlanders, your Biebers, you could. But that's not going to win it for you every day. It's not nearly as simple as that. It's all about finding that good value, finding those multiplier spots, and knowing when to play the guys that only have a 1x multiplier. So it's fun. It challenges you to look at it differently. And really the best part about all of this is we're giving you $10 free when you sign up and deposit $10 simply by using the sign up code Awesemo10. That's the promo code AWESEMO10, or get $20 free when you deposit $100 or more, both of them, Awesemo10, AWESEMO10, all one word, don't space it out. Use the numbers 10. Check it out, superdraft.com. No salaries, multipliers. Go to the App Store, check it out at superdraft.io, and let us know what you think. Okay, let's keep it moving here. We got 5 to go. We're making decent time. We always manage to pull this off. Pittsburgh and St. Louis. Jack Flaherty and Joe Musgrove. Man, he is the bane of my existence, that fucking guy. so let's start with Jack Flaherty. $9,000. How about that? $9,000 on DraftKings. I know he didn't have the year that many were expecting. You know, he was some guy coming into 2019, and the sights were set very high on a lot of people, whether it be analysts, fans, DFS players, fantasy players, you name it. He ended up being fine, but it wasn't a stellar season. It certainly wasn't a totally memorable one for him. But if you look at some areas, like if you're an ERA guy, yeah, you know, he was solid. You look at strikeouts, really solid. But why was it, Adam, that despite the well over a strikeout per inning from him, a sub-3 ERA, which isn't a stat we use all that often, that his fantasy totals towards the end of the season, I think he put up some monster scores, but in the beginning it wasn't great. I think he finished the year out really strong.
Yeah, so I remember him finishing the year out really strong, and I expect more of that to come this year.
Yeah, me too.
I think the 9K price tag is really favorable for him, and I feel really similarly about him as I do about Aaron Nola, that I really hope, or I wouldn't be upset at all if by the time lot comes around I'm getting more than I am right now, because I think he is a really good pitcher. I think the price tag's too cheap, and I don't think it's a really bad matchup against the Pirates at all. Only a 3.5 implied run total here. You do have a pretty balanced lineup for the Pirates, but you have 4 lefties in the top 5. That's a little bit of a knock on Flaherty, who struck out 25% of lefties last year compared to 35% of righties. But again, I think the salary is just too cheap. It really just comes down to roster construction, and there's not that many high upside, cheap stacks on tonight's slate, and the ones that there are getting a lot of ownership. So I think the biggest problem I'm finding is that it's hard for me to do like the Flaherty Nola or Verlander Flaherty cheap stack team and find a way that I'm like leveraging the field and not just playing the same lineups as everyone else. So that's keeping my exposure to him down a little bit. But by all means, if you can get the Flaherty, I think that he's, excluding ownership, I think he's one of the better pitchers and one of the better spots on this slate.
I'm with you. And I wanted to make sure that I wasn't misremembering that. His first couple of months were struggling to go deep into games. There's a lot of spots here where did he turn it on? Like he went scoreless in more than half of his last 10, 9+ strikeouts in most of them. Like the last half of the season, if he comes back and looks similar to that, this is going to be a very dangerous pitcher. He was going 7 innings plus in almost all of these starts. What a difference a half a season can make, man. That was a huge difference. So
I think he had a pitch mix thing that changed too. Like he started, I think it was he started throwing his slider more to lefties. I'm just going off the top of my head, I think he started throwing his slider more to lefties, which made a drastic difference for him.
You might be right. I'm having trouble remembering it, but something happened.
I'm almost positive that's what it was.
I could go to Brooks Baseball real quick. Unfortunately, we don't have time, but if anyone's interested, brooksbaseball.net, that'll give you anything you need to know. So, okay, and maybe when one of us is talking, the other can look it up. What else are you doing with Pittsburgh and St. Louis, with Musgrove on the bump for the Pirates?
Unfortunately, I think playing some Musgrove just.
I'm telling you, this guy ruins lives.
I don't like it. I mean, it's not a great matchup for him. I guess one thing working in his favor is there are only 4 left-handed hitters in this lineup. And outside of Carpenter, none of them are that good. So he has that going for him at least. But it's mostly just a tournament price play where hopefully he salvages and does good enough to where my Bats can win a tournament for me. I think that there's a little bit of appeal, especially on DraftKings too. And I'm only rostering him on DraftKings, to be clear. Don't do it on FanDuel. But also, I think the Cardinals are going to be a team that gets a lot of ownership because they're one of the few cheap stacks that does have upside on this slate. So if Musgrove does pitch well, you are knocking off a nice chunk of the field.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm just, for what it's worth, Flaherty's slider usage did come up against lefties.
I agree completely.
Yeah, it's too cheap. When I saw that, I thought, like, sometimes it's good to compare it to other pitchers. And the fact that, he is around the same price, $600 cheaper than Berrios. I'll take Flaherty over Berrios all day in this particular spot. So, any bats?
The Cardinals, I think, again, there's an ownership issue there. But as far as value goes, I think they're a pretty good value stack. The only expensive hitter on the team is Tommy Edman hitting second. Goldschmidt is 4,200. Every other hitter is sub 4K. So against a very mediocre pitcher in Musgrove. So I think that they'll be really popular, which will keep me away from them because I think it's just going to be an optimizer type stack. But I do think that they're good values.
All right, San Diego and Arizona. Madison Bumgarner making a start for the Arizona Diamondbacks. That sounds strange. And Chris Paddock for the San Diego Padres. Their logo threw me off seeing that again for the first time. It's yellow now. You see that?
The Padres?
Yeah, it's yellow.
I see blue. But I do know what you're talking about.
Yeah, on an MLB app and on MLB, it's yellow now. It just blows my mind. But anyway, how about Chris Paddock? Let's dive into this fella a little bit. Coming back after so high strikeout pitcher. There were a lot of concerns that he wasn't pitching deep enough into games, and some of that might have been calculated. Do you expect him to be able to be, fully stretched out, go the distance as long as he needs to go today against Arizona at Petco Park?
I assume they'll give him a little bit longer leash this year just because of, the shorter season. I think
that was the biggest problem last year.
Right. He was really good. It was just you're getting like 85 pitches from him most of the time. Hopefully, I think going from memory, we started to see him go a little bit deeper toward the end of last year. Hopefully we can see more of that. It's not a bad matchup against Arizona, but, again, it's just a really, really tough price point in terms of getting it into my lineups, but then also in terms of prioritizing him over someone like Flaherty or over someone like Nola. So I think I'll have a little bit of Paddock. I don't expect him to be very popular either, so I might be a little bit overweight, but certainly not someone that my night's revolving around just because of the depth of the slate.
So Chris Paddock last year, just looking at handedness splits, struck out lefties at 24%, righties at 30%. As a righty, it's pretty impressive. Do you say that this Diamondbacks lineup, just looking at it now, is one that concerns you? Or is a Diamondbacks lineup that you don't mind going up against if you're a right-handed pitcher, or don't mind rostering a right-handed pitcher against?
I don't mind it if they're good, like Paddock is. I don't think it's the best lineup to go up against. They do have some power in there. They added Starling Marte. You have Ketel Marte coming off of a breakout season. David Peralta's a good hitter. Marte's only a 14% strikeout guy. Peralta's sub 20%. Escobar's sub 20%. So none of that obviously is very appealing. So I think Paddock, does have stuff where he can still have a good start. But again, when you're just comparing so many of these similar pitchers, it's tough for me to prioritize Paddock over guys like Nola and Flaherty.
And I also think, despite a really awful season last year, Jake Lamb is our 8-hole hitter against the righty is. I don't believe he's as bad as he was last year, and he still has plenty of power facing right-handed pitching. So. I would agree with you on that. Is there anything else here when we talk Bumgarner? Look at San Diego stack right now. They were up there before, and now it looks like they have fallen
way up there,
considerably. They're down. They're way down. Oh no, I'm sorry. You know what? I had it sorted by top stack potential probability. So they have the second highest projected stack ownership right now, and top stack probability. They're down at like 10 or 12, just not a good ratio that you're looking for.
Yeah, and that's kind of disappointing. But again, it's kind of what I was mentioning when I talked about the Orioles being a team where obviously I think they suck, but they aren't facing a great pitcher, and they're going to get a lot less ownership than teams like the Cardinals and the Padres. I would love to go to the Padres here because Madison Yeah, they're really cheap. They have a lot of right-handed power, and Madison Bumgarner outside of San Francisco has been pretty much incapable of getting right-handed hitters out for years. So I'd love to go to the Padres, but it's just the pricing is going to get you there. It's going to get the field there, and I don't really know how contrarian you can be. And it's not like in terms of just overall upside, which you need to win tournaments. It's not like the Padres compare it to teams like the Astros and the Dodgers and the Red Sox. So you're playing popular plays that still have a pretty low probability of success.
They're so inexpensive is the thing. And that's why obviously it's driving ownership up. Like when your 3 or your 4, 5, and 6 hitter and 7 hitter are all 3,400 or less. Same with your 8-hole hitter, but talking middle, like the meat of this lineup, 4, 5, and 6, 3,400 for Jurickson Profar, 3,200 for Hosmer, lefty, fine. Not a great spot, but still, Will Myers, a ton of power and even a little bit of speed, 3,400. Do you see spots where maybe you'd feel better not stacking them, but still wanting pieces of this Padres team in your lineups?
Yeah, I think they're a good team to grab one-offs or mini stacks from. I think that if you're pairing them with a stack that like isn't the Red Sox, basically, that you should be contrarian enough because you do have a lot of power upside from guys like Machado, Pham, Tatis, Myers, even Ty France batting 7th. So I do like that idea. You want to be aware of who you're pairing them with. You don't want to be playing 5 Red Sox with 2 Padres and a Cardinals one-off and then Verlander. Like you're not getting yourself a very easy path to a win.
Live before lock coming up after the show. I believe we got Chris Spags and Alex Baker tonight, so stick around. They're bringing you up to lock. Talking about Houston and Seattle here. Marco Gonzalez toeing the rubber for the Seattle Mariners. Another one of these guys who, as far as having him maybe middle, back of your rotation, he's a good pitcher. He's just not a good fantasy pitcher and not someone that's ever going to give you enough strikeouts to feel confident, even at a cheap price, but particularly going up against the Houston Astros. Now, my first question, though, is if you had to set a line, right, on an Astro player getting plunked in the first inning tonight, what would you set it at?
I wouldn't say it's the favorite, and not even
really. Okay, what about for the game?
I don't think they waste it with Marco Gonzalez. He throws 84 miles an hour.
You think they want a flamethrower out there?
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna bother hitting them with a changeup.
Are they gonna go head hunting?
I don't know if they'll go head hunting, but like if you get hit in the back with a changeup, it doesn't send a message. Like,
it actually does send a message, and you just laugh.
Right. Like if George Springer steps into the box and the first pitch is an 86 mile an hour fastball in his ribs, he's going to laugh.
Right. No, you're right. Yeah. All right. Fair enough. So we'll set it as a slight dog, maybe, or a pretty heavy dog.
I wish I knew who pitched tomorrow for the Mariners and how hard they throw, because I think that would change the line.
All right, hold on. I know we don't have a lot of time. I got it right here.
Also, I think that another reason they're not a favorite is the Mariners suck, and the Astros cheating has no impact on them whatsoever.
Yeah, it's fair. Taijuan Walker.
More likely to do it with Walker than with Gonzalez, for sure.
All right. Back to business here. The Houston Astros have a 5.8 run total, tied for the highest on the day, going up against Gonzalez. Teams always have these super high totals, and then Gonzalez goes out there and shuts them down very, very quietly. But with Springer and Altuve and Bregman, God, it's just such a filthy lineup. Michael Brantley, Gurriel, Correa batting 6th. What a horrifying lineup with power righty, one after another, speed on the base paths. This team is frightening, but they're also relatively expensive too.
Yeah, I mean, I hate taking teams against Gonzalez because he does such a good job of changing speeds and locating.
Yeah, he quietly shuts you down with like 2 strikeouts across 7 innings. Gets
a lot of infield pop-ups, had like a 12% infield fly ball percentage last year. That said, right now the Astros are my highest owned stack on DraftKings. They obviously have the same kind of upside as the Dodgers and the Red Sox and any other team on this slate. But right now we have them getting less than half the ownership of the Dodgers, 1/6 of the ownership of the Red Sox. It's tough to get to them because of their salaries. And I just think that it's a great spot to be very, very much overweight and hope that they're able to get to Gonzalez.
Okay. Yeah. Were you surprised by this ownership? I was pretty shocked by it. I know they're expensive, but still.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. It's not just that they're expensive. When you compare them to the Red Sox and the Dodgers, like George Springer is $800 more than JD Martinez.
Let me use an Alex Baker term. Pay up to be contrarian spot right here.
Yep, exactly.
Anti-optimizer play, right? That's how I see it.
Yeah, I agree.
What about? I'll let you run with this a little bit because we're running out of time. What about Justin Verlander?
Phenomenal spot. Best number one option on the slate if you can get there. Wouldn't be fading him in cash games. In tournaments, I think if he comes in around 30 or 40% ownership, I probably end up under the field, but that's not a knock on him. It's just that there are so many other good pitchers on this slate and so many bats that I want to get to. But I mean, the guy struck out 39% of lefties over the last 2 years. The Mariners are running 6 lefties out there. Basically, nobody in this lineup except for Seager and Vogelbach can hit at all. There's no reason not to love Verlander.
Yeah, you know, it's funny though, of every pitcher on this slate, and by the way, this is not me trying to degrade Justin Verlander at all. He's allowed more home runs than anyone on the slate last year, 36 of them, and most were solo shots, but that's a big number, man. It's a lot of times the best pitchers, or some of the best pitchers, allow the most home runs. Like him and Bieber have allowed the most home runs of any pitcher on this slate. They've also probably seen the most batters and thrown the most innings. So, you know, that matters too. Any bats from Seattle side I have to ask?
Absolutely not.
All right. LA Dodgers, San Francisco Giants. We've got 2 to go. Dodgers here coming up in the top stack tool with the second highest top stack percentage, which if you haven't checked the tool out or our ownership or our projections, all of which developed and used daily by Alex Baker himself. You may know him as Awesemo. Some may know him as the #1 ranked DFS player in the world, co-founder of Awesemo.com, our boss. He developed them. He uses them. They're not just slapping his name on it. These are the tools that he uses every day. And we've got some really great stuff. Like if you wanted to use the promo code RESTART, it'll get you 50% off everything for the next 31 days for the month. It's a huge discount on the value of the monthly package. Or you can use the promo code Manfred, like Rob Manfred. It expires today to get 50% off the entire MLB package. You get it, I think, for like $25. But I would recommend doing the monthly. It's like $20 more. I think it's $45, 50% off. And you get everything on the site. We've got so many sports right now that why not give yourself that opportunity to check everything out. All of our premium articles, the lineup builder, projections, ownership, top stack tool, and the Fantasy Cruncher add-on, and a lot more like our premium Slack. So check it out. Restart for 50% off everything. Manfred, if you just want to get the Awesemo Plus baseball package, both of them at checkout. We'll see you over there. Say what's up in the Slack chat when you do decide to sign up. All right, Ross Stripling, Jeff Samardzija, the whole Clayton Kershaw nonsense was really something else yesterday. Samardzija was probable. Do we finally have somebody slotted in the start here for San Francisco? Because when we started the show, we did it.
Yeah, not that I've seen.
Okay. Samardzija's on DraftKings, but that's the only place that's showing it. So what do you have here between Stripling, Samardzija, and the hitters? Just run it full circle. Yeah,
it's pretty much just the Dodgers bats for me. Samardzija gives up a ton of power to left-handed hitters, assuming that he does get the start. You obviously have a lot of really good lefties in this lineup. You also have Mookie Betts in it. So absolutely love the Dodgers.
Okay. I guess there's not a whole lot to say about them, really, outside of just roster them, right?
Hey, everyone knows that they're all really good.
And no pitching for Stripling, obviously, nothing for Samardzija. This is a pretty easy one. Just play the Dodgers.
Yep.
All right. Let's wrap it up. I know, maybe I'm wrong, but I think I know you well enough to think that you have some interesting stuff to say on Frankie Montes, and he's probably a guy that you've been waiting to talk about. You linked me that article, and it was really fascinating. He's at home today, opening night pitcher against Andrew Heaney, who's got a filthy curveball, but just can't limit power enough. What do you know about Montes, and why do you like him? Maybe not tonight, but going forward.
Yeah, I'm really excited to watch his start tonight. There's an article by Alex Coffey at The Athletic talking about his quarantine workout regimen and changes he made, getting a lot more extension than he did last year on his pitches. And apparently he's gone from last year averaging about 96 miles an hour on his fastball to now sitting around 100. If that is true and is the case, he was already a good pitcher. There's a chance that he's a much better pitcher now than he was before. It's still going to be tough to get a lot of him on this slate just because of the price point and the matchup. I think he's a much better option on FanDuel at only 7,600 than 8,800 on DraftKings, but I really am intrigued, and it's something I want to watch. On the other side, I think that Andrew Heaney on both sites is a good tournament play. It's a terrifying spot against the A's. They have a ton of right-handed power, but at the same time, $6,600 FanDuel price tag, $8K on DraftKings for a pitcher that struck out 29% of right-handed hitters last year. He does struggle with power, like you said, but it's only supposed to be in the high 50s or low 60s in Oakland today, which is already a park that doesn't play up power. So really, really scary spot, but I do think that Heaney gives you a really high ceiling for his salary.
Heaney's been great to me, and Heaney's been terrible to me. I think you would probably agree. He's somebody that has the potential. He's got a knee buckling curveball. It's just a matter of whether he's getting called strikes on it and if he can force swings. It was something that we saw with Dallas Keuchel years ago where he had a nasty slider, get him to swing out of the zone, and then they just stopped swinging out of the zone, and he had to redesign everything he was doing. Strikeout rate went down a lot. A little worried that Andrew Heaney is having the similar issue, but the ceiling, the upside is there for sure. Close us out before Spags and Alex come out. I know we're running late, so I appreciate you guys bearing with us. It's a lot of games. Any hitters here on either side that you're interested in, and then we'll hand it over to the Live Before Lock crew.
Not a ton. A lot of respect for both pitchers. If I do go to bats, it'll be right-handed power. Matt Chapman, Chris Davis in particular from Oakland.
All right, that'll do it for us. Hey, hit that thumbs up, but don't head anywhere. Same stream, Live Before Lock. Alex Baker, Awesemo himself, and Chris Spags taking you up till 7:05 Lock. Thanks for hanging out as always. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
Hey guys. What's up, guys? All right, what's up, guys? We should be starting up now. And hello, everybody. Welcome to another season of MLB. 11 games on today's slate. A lot to talk about. But thankfully, I am blessed by the company of the man, the myth, the legend, the one who's behind every single thing we have here on this YouTube channel and, of course, at Awesemo.com, Alex Awesemo Baker. How you doing, Alex?
I'm doing pretty good, man. It's great to be talking some MLB, and I'm just forgetting about yesterday's stream because, like, to me that wasn't really MLB DFS with 2 games, but this 11 game are a lot more exciting today.
Yeah, should be a lot of fun here. Lots to talk about as we go, and also some important deals to hit up front. First of all, this show is presented by SuperDraft. That is the presenting sponsor of many of our shows here on the YouTube channel. And of course, one of the best places you can be playing right now. Alex talked about it a little bit yesterday with our boy Jake Hari, handsome Jake back in the mix. But it's important to go play on SuperDraft. It's a site that's going to have a little more freedom for you. You can play any players you want there, which is important for baseball, where you're constricted a lot by salary and some of the other sites. And also, the tournaments on there. Alex Alex talked about it. I'll throw to him in a second and he can explain why. But at SuperDraft, there's a lot of value just in playing because there are not as many sharp players on there at the volume there are on some of the other sites. And Alex, on SuperDraft today, I mean, what's the reason people should be going over?
I think that there's a lot of great reasons, but at the end of the day, we all just want to win money playing some DFS. And SuperDraft, like what I've noticed is the contests don't always fill. And that's a huge opportunity to just play for a reduced amount of the site fee. So that's a great reason. And then I think a lot of people are jumping in at the last minute and not really paying much attention. That gives you a great opportunity to get an edge if you're focusing more on SuperDraft because their system is pretty unique.
It's a great site to play on. Use the promo code at SuperDraft right now. Awesemo10, AWESEMO10. You get $10 free on your first deposit of $10 or more and $20 free on your deposit of $100 or more. Let's go to superdraft.io or download SuperDraft in the App Store of your choosing, because on SuperDraft, there are no limits, only winning. So go check them out for yourself and for us. It would be a great move to do that right now. And of course, one other deal that we have going, and a little special deal coming at the end of this show, so we don't risk the crashing of the sites as will be a lot of pain to people out there. But after the show, we're going to have a special deal. But if you want to get the projections, the ownership projections, the top stack tool, the top pitchers tool, you can do that at awesemo.com/join. Use the promo code RESTART if you want to get all the sports. That's 50% off of your monthly package of Awesemo Plus. So you get NBA when that comes back, get PGA, which is murdering my sanity on a weekly basis. NASCAR is great. MMA is great. UFC has a gigantic card coming up. So the promo code RESTART to get half off all of it. And if you just want some MLB access for cheaper, go use the promo code of Manfred for 50% off of an MLB package. And you can do all of that right now at awesemo.com/join. Woo, boy, being back in chilling mode is tough. I'm in a couch now, so at least I'm comfortable for it, but it's...
That was pro, man.
That's what I'm here for. But now let's talk baseball. We got all the handiwork out of the way. And Alex, it's a bit of a weird day here, and the top stacks tool always going to be self-evident for defining how a slate's going to go. And the top stacks tool right now indicates pretty heavily the field's going to be on Boston. Boston looks great going against Tommy Malone, a guy who's not shown much in the past. And Boston and themselves, despite losing Mookie Betts, a lot of guys here with a lot of power, good weather as well there. A little hotter. I think it's something to talk about than it usually is. The deeper dive guys mentioned that, but it is hotter across the U.S. than it normally is for the start of a baseball season, so hitters should benefit a bit. And going against Tommy Malone, a guy last year gave up over 235 ISO rather to both sides of the plate, so giving up a ton of power. But Alex, the top stacks tool says that playing Boston might not be the wisest move based on ownership. You want to explain to the folks out there why that would be, even though they have the highest run total? I think if you look at it, obviously, like many players who are playing MLB for the first time, they're just going to think Boston looks great, but there's probably some reason to not go there based on the top stacks tool.
Oh boy, yeah, you're setting me up for making a dangerous tout here.
Trying to make you look bad right away. That's the goal.
Boston's probably like the best overall play today, not counting ownership, but of course we are counting ownership. So that's like the thing about today's slate that I noticed is that you have to make really tough choices because it's really hard to make a lineup that has everything you want. Like if you want to stack teams and get really good pitchers, that's hard to do today. So if your lineup looks a little bit too good and you're too comfortable with it, it might be because you have Boston. I think getting uncomfortable here is the play.
So getting uncomfortable, and I guess, I think it's all relative. There is a team that you can go to on the top stacks tool. And again, you can see all the teams on the slate. Use that promo code Manfred at awesemo.com/join to get half off your first month of an Awesemo Plus MLB package. But Houston is the team that it seems like, and I don't, hopefully I'm not giving too much of the secret sauce away here. We all know Houston's good. We all know they're public enemy number one right now. They're not going to have the banging trash cans to help them out this go round, but still a quality team of hitters here. And it seems like, at least based on the most recent tool, or at least most recent updates to the top stacks tool that I imported, Houston seems like the team I should be targeting based on that. And do you think that's going to be your number one team today, or does that feel like one that maybe you'll go a little bit more acute than that one would be?
And I'm running a little bit behind where I normally am today, so I haven't really finished building my lineups. I'm excited to do that on the stream. It's kind of this new experience, but what I'm looking at is Houston. I mean, a terrific team. Fortunately, we got their lineup today, and pretty much because Boston is taking so much ownership, almost 20% of all the ownership, that makes it so every other team looks pretty low owned. And I think that maybe we'll get some extra bases from guys getting plumped. So I have to agree with you that Houston looks like a pretty good one. I do want to mention some breaking news here. So Tyler Anderson is starting for the Giants. He's actually a pretty good pitcher. Like, he's been slowed down at Coors Field because obviously he can't get as many strikeouts in Coors, and he give up way more runs. So the fact that he's in San Francisco now is a big bump. Well, because he is facing the Dodgers tonight, it's hard to be extremely excited, but maybe he's a contrary play tonight.
And just important to have him in there because I've had unknown as the pitcher in my list here all day, which doesn't reveal a lot about the Dodgers prospects, but that's a good one to know. Tyler Anderson playing tonight for San Francisco after they've held that one close to the vest all day. And some lineups also have come through. The Angels and the Athletics have both put their lineups out. And I think that might have come through in the last few minutes, and doesn't look like there's anything too unexpected there that I'm seeing. But let's keep talking about some of the top stacks, Alex. And the question that people always ask you, and people maybe hunt a little bit too much for, so maybe if you want to talk a little bit about that while you go through your process, is there an undervalued stack that you see right now that jumps out, maybe an anti-optimizer type play? I know that was the main question the deeper dive guys would always ask you, and a lot of times those teams came through. So either based off the top stacks tool or just your own inkling, is there a team that's really jumping out to you as being, boy, nobody's going to be on these guys, and even though they might not look great, they actually do have some upside to make something happen tonight?
Man, there's so many choices tonight that I think you can pretty much stack like a lot of different teams and be in a good spot. The one thing I'll mention, it depends a lot on the size of the tournament you're playing in. So if you're gunning for that $1 million prize on FanDuel, it makes sense to go a little bit crazy and maybe go with a Diamondback stack that they only have a 4 team total, but we know they got some decent players at least. San Diego, the weather isn't great for pitching or for batting, but that's an example of one that's like kind of a long shot I like. But then when it comes to the better teams, I think you nailed it with Houston. I think they're going to go overlooked just because they have to be contrarian spot. And then some other teams I like. I mean, the Rockies, they're not in Coors, so that's never great. But they are in Globe Life, which is a decent park. So even though they're facing a decent pitcher in Lance Lynn, they could go under the radar today.
Can we talk for a second about Globe Life? Because I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. And I guess, I'm sure the assumption is the Vegas total builds it in, but Globe Life, the guys on the Deeper Dive, Loughran and Adam, were talking about how the roof is actually going to be closed there today. In the past, we're used to the scorching 100-degree plus temperatures that come in Arlington. It's not going to be the case this year. And it does seem like maybe that might not matter as much as people think. And we've seen in Arizona that, their occasionally closed roof doesn't matter quite as much as maybe people might have guessed. But in Texas, is that going to be the case for you? Do you think that closed roof games are ones that maybe they'll be a little overowned because of people relying on Texas like they have in the past? Or is it still kind of business as usual there because Texas is still as hot as balls and also chock full of virus?
That's a good point. Yeah, maybe we'll have to keep an eye out on some late scratches there. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think everyone's looking at the same information, which in this case is the Vegas total, and it's pretty high. So, I mean, you got 2 great pitchers in German Marquez and Lance Lynn. I mean, Lance Lynn had to come back here last year. So they have an over-under of 9. And on today's slate, that's one of the highest. So I think I'm pretty comfortable taking some chances there.
Also, you guys may notice in the chat, if you were watching along on YouTube, though on the smart TV, I actually got a smart TV, and it's part of moving into this glorious new setup I have here. And you don't get to see the YouTube chat when you're watching on that. So that bums me out a little bit to miss the great feedback going on there. But if you are watching on a laptop or your mobile, you can see right now there are some questions going on in the chat, some trivia questions. We're giving away SuperDraft tickets. So even if you don't want to get in, pay your own way to get in on SuperDraft, the place where you can play any players you want. You should be paying to get in there. But if you want to get some free tickets, we are doing MLB trivia questions in the chat. Our boy Joey Corman doing some chats, some little chat trivia games right now. So go check that out and keep your eyes there to see when the next question hits so you can get some SuperDraft tickets for yourself. Let's keep going through some of the stacks here, Alex, because I feel like you got to get back to business here with our top stacks tool. And it is really one of the most important ones you can get at awesemo.com/join. Another team that I liked, and I'm playing on FanDuel today. I'm getting a little FanDuel action. I am largely a DraftKings and SuperDraft guy first and foremost, but on FanDuel, some big tournaments up top there. Like you mentioned, big chance to win $1 million. You got to play a little there. And the Cleveland Indians are a team that I'm intrigued by today. I know Danny Duffy, Deeper Dive guys, talked about sort of the mixed bag that Duffy can be. He's playable sometimes. He's very unplayable others. And like maybe he can give you a negative number some days. He's going against the Cleveland team who, Jose Ramirez is down a little bit last year, kind of figured it out down the stretch, but they have a lot of guys who can do damage. And the ownership on them, not that bad on DraftKings, also not terribly bad on FanDuel. How are you feeling about the Cleveland Indians today going against Danny Duffy and the Royals?
Well, Danny Duffy, pretty average pitcher, so that's definitely a good sign for the Indians, given that they're pretty talented lineup, and it looks like they got some newer guys and that we're not used to being Indians, like Cesar Hernandez. I think Franmil Reyes. I can't remember if he was traded last season, but these guys got some decent talent. So throwing them in with Jose Ramirez and Lindor, you got a pretty nice stack. Price is pretty high, but they look solid. Not really jumping off the page, but that might make it so if people are just trying to make their best lineup, it's going to be Boston stack, not a Indian stack.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And certainly, as we talked about earlier, if you're just tuning in, Boston going to be the chalk stack of the day. It looks like pretty much industry-wide. Again, very high team total for them going against the guy in Tommy Malone. Doesn't have very much going for him based off of last year's data and really any moment he's ever had in the majors for the most part. Let's keep going through some of these hitters before we get to the pitching. Pitching going to be very important today, and there are some very obvious places to go there. But stack-wise, is there anybody else, Alex, who we haven't hit on that you feel like is worth bringing to the people? Because we could sort of debate the minutia here. People asking about Philadelphia's weather. I know they're a stack that I got some with your projections when running some crunches before today. Philly, any of these other guys really jump out to you as being somebody you're going to have considerable exposure tonight?
And I think that I'm going to just spread around my ownership like pretty smoothly across a lot of different teams here. I'm just going to avoid like the really popular ones like Boston. It does depend a little bit on what tournament you're playing. So you can be a little bit more chalky if it's a smaller tournament, but mostly I'm just trying to avoid certain teams, and we're looking at the highest owned teams. One that would be definitely a fade is the Padres. They are just priced really cheap, and they're kind of like the optimizer play, I suppose. And then we have the Phillies that look quite popular just because it's hard to make a lineup. But one thing I'm focusing more on today is like how you build your stack. So, I mean, Spags, I know like you play on some different sites, but do you typically stack all your players, or do you have a one-off, or how do you handle that?
For the most part in a slate like this, I'm usually trying to do 5-3s on DraftKings. I think that's, I believe at least that's what I've picked up from you as being the optimal there, because you're going to find those outlier performances. I don't mind a 5-2-1 normally. And I started last year, like a sorting process, like a lot of our guys use, where you're getting your 4-2-1s, your 4-3s, your 5-3s, or whatever, putting them all together in the same sheet. But I know for me on a bigger slate, I'm usually trying to hit, as much of a stacking approach as possible. Is that something that you feel like would be the right approach? Am I doing that incorrectly? If you want to call me out for being an idiot on the show right now, I think that's completely fair.
No, I mean, I think like normally stacking 5-3 is like kind of the best stack, because you obviously have all your players correlated. And the only thing I'm noticing tonight is it's just hard to build a lineup, and the pricing is pretty sharp. There's not a lot of edge in kind of like going for value stacks. So it becomes really hard to build a complete lineup that has too many constraints like on the stacking. So this is a night where I definitely consider putting in more one-offs, just because if you punt one position with like a 2K guy, that makes it so you can really get unique combinations of players. So like if you took two expensive teams like Houston and Cleveland, for instance, like if you start stacking 5 and 3, it becomes pretty impossible quick. So that'd be a situation where you're not giving up advantage to other players who are stacking it with more players from the team, because this is not possible, but you got a really interesting build.
Yeah, that makes sense. And definitely going to have to find some ways to get different for some of these larger tournaments out there. And I guess, a little more specifically, we don't often talk about tournaments on specific sites, but you mentioned FanDuel earlier. And I feel like with the size of that tournament, as well as the price point, I know I saw some guys on our premium Slack, which of course you do get with that Awesemo Plus membership at awesemo.com/join, and use that promo code either restart if you want all of the sports put together for once, for one package for 50% off. If you want to do just MLB, you can use the promo code of Manfred, like the commissioner of MLB, at awesemo.com/join. But I saw people in the premium Slack today talking about how they felt like just max entering it just because it's about the cheapest shot at $1 million you'll ever have. Is there something you would do today in particular on FanDuel to try to get different in that tournament? Or is it just because, there's enough teams on this slate? This isn't like yesterday where you only have 2 games. There's enough ways to get different without getting too outside the box?
Man, it's kind of crazy, because I feel like if I had more time, I would really try to go out, I think outside the box for that tournament. But because, this kind of tournament happens not even once a year, where they have 100 or 1 million people in it. So it's I haven't really dedicated a ton of time to figuring it out. But just in general, in these really big millionaire makers, I like to have some plays that are 1% or less owned, or maybe it's a stack, because even though they have a low shot to win the slate, with 1 million people in it, you don't have a great chance to begin with. So I like mixing it up that way.
Yeah, and definitely a lot of ways to get different on the slate. And make sure you're checking out the Top Stacks tool, as well as the new Top Pitchers tool. A lot of people who are going to be talking about coming up and pitching, who are going to be important players to know about. And the Top Pitchers tool is a good way to differentiate the bad from the good right away, besides just throwing a crapshoot out there at some of these cheap guys. And I guess we should start talking pitching a little bit here. We are going to do the home run picks, dong picks yesterday. A complete disaster as always. I think none of us got anything right. Offers for me, for Jake, for Emac, and for Alex yesterday. But you know what? That's why you keep getting up to bat, keep doing it. Actually, give us some zeros in this. But let's start talking about pitching here. And I'm opening up the Top Pitchers tool, which I actually have not integrated into my sheet yet, but need to work on that, because it's going to be a very important one to have. And Alex, there's nothing like this in the industry, right? I feel like you want to confirm that real fast.
Well, it was original idea at least, but the whole name of the game is comparing the ownership to the chance of success for different players. And if you take one, either projection or ownership by itself, it doesn't give you enough of the picture. You need both. And that's kind of the reason why we have these tools to help you kind of take into account all the factors while you build your lineups.
Yeah, so it is a very helpful tool. Check it out. Again, part of that Awesemo Plus membership at awesemo.com/join. Once again, promo code Manfred. I'm just doing it for everybody coming in, because this is the time where you got to make sure you're getting advantage of these deals before they go away. 50% off your first month of an MLB package with that promo code Manfred at awesemo.com/join. There is something on the Top Pitchers chart, which if we're approaching it the same way that we normally do with the Top Stacks tool, looking for the concept of leverage, looking for all of that, the top pitcher on the board is a pretty obvious one, Justin Verlander. But it does seem like the ownership is high enough where, based on purely on the concept of leverage, it might be wise to go elsewhere. But just to talk about Justin Verlander fast, Alex, do you think that you should be looking at the Top Pitchers tool that same way that we do as Top Stacks, where, pitching, we saw it yesterday, Cole and Scherzer were so much better than the other options. They ended up being the optimal play. And today it does seem like Verlander and maybe to a lesser extent Shane Bieber are guys who are just so much better than the field. Would you want to still be heavy on Verlander, even with his ownership being a little higher than his chances of being a top 2 pitcher? Or do you feel like it's just, stay with the field then, because he's not that crazy of an outlier play relative to ownership?
I think that's a great question. Before I answer that, I want to mention I had a little error in the projections. Kind of multitasking here, so make sure to refresh those. I just updated the Dodgers lineup. So I think Verlander, he's in a great spot because he's going up against the Mariners, who don't have a lot of power, and then they also strike out a lot. So I think that he's in a premier situation. And the only thing holding me back from a going recommendation is the price, because I feel like going to him is a significant disadvantage, because when you pick a pitcher that costs that much, it kind of funnels you into certain roster constructions. But yeah, for that reason, I think that I'd like to kind of build with cheaper pitchers tonight, probably. But certainly an excellent play. I mean, how are you handling Verlander tonight?
I'm playing him enough. I think I'm going to be with the field on him. I just don't see, the reason to get away for that much. But I'm with you. I do think that you do have to get a little different. And I'm actually checking the top pitchers tool to see if there's a guy who I'm intrigued by and where he is. And it's actually not great. But Nathan Eovaldi is a guy that I'm sort of intrigued by just for the price point. I think it's still the pitch counts can be a little evasive in this part of the season, and I don't really know how it's going to go. Not a great projection on Eovaldi, but going against a team in the Orioles who really has not much to offer in terms of their bats. One of the lowest implied total. It's actually not a bad implied total. I guess it came up a little, but just guys who don't do much damage besides Austin Hayes in that lineup. I'm never afraid of Baltimore. I know, Boston's Park may help out some of these guys, but I just don't see a single thing in there, at least based on the longer term sample size that I'm concerned about. Again, besides Hayes, who had a pretty good run last year as a younger player. I like Eovaldi conceptually. He was not great last year either. He's one of those dart throw type guys I would take a stab at, but is that an incorrect play for you, Alex? Because the top pitchers tool is not supporting my.
Well, I actually like it because the Orioles. I don't know why that was so hard.
The joy of doing lineups live on the show, Alex. I feel like you've mostly been insulated because of the high volume you're playing, but it's terrible. The left brain and right brain really have to be humming like little hamster wheels.
Definitely, it's probably hilarious for people to watch us in action here, but I think that the matchup couldn't be better versus the Orioles. He's not a great pitcher though, and the park isn't that great. So that would come down to the ownership. But I think going to a pitcher like Eovaldi, he's definitely kind of a guy I feel comfortable with given the matchup. And that helps you really stack your lineup with some good batters. So I do like that for tournaments.
Another guy that I'm getting a bit of today, which I guess we could talk about, let's just do home run picks. I feel like I'll tease it out. So stay tuned here. Hit that like button too, guys. I haven't pandered for likes at all, but we need them just as much as we need you to sign up at awesemo.com/join. So help us out. Hit that like button. And of course, if you're not subscribed, you should be. If you haven't been paying attention for the last few months because you're like, oh, there aren't, no MLB, no NFL, no NBA, I don't care. We have had so many shows and so many great shows. The MMA show with Jason Floyd and Pete the Heat, a fantastic show that I've personally taken down a couple tournaments because of, in part because of the knowledge that they provide. PGA guys as well, Ben, Jason, all the folks we have over there, Tim doing a great job with that content. So make sure you're subscribed to this channel so you're seeing everything that comes through. Esports as well. We've had a lot of success with that, both in our company and for me personally. So I've enjoyed our content even when I haven't been a part of it, and encourage you guys to make sure to watch everything, not just the MLB. But it is time for Dong Picks, of course, the staple of this show, the bane of my existence, of course, but also brings me great joy when you do well. And Alex, this is you're new here to Live Before Lock, even though you are the namesake of the site. You've filled in sometimes, but now you're fully on board with our antics. So I'll let you choose first here because that just seems like a nice thing to do to get on the board for our Dong Picks.
All right. This is a guy that I was scouting out this morning. This is a player from a team that's up and coming, and he's a rookie. So I don't think many people are going to know who he is, but Luis Robert for the White Sox. The matchup isn't great going up against Jose Berrios, but this guy has really good power. Last year in AAA, he had 337 ISO over 200 plate appearances. And ISO does tend to translate pretty closely to the majors. So I'm kind of projecting to have above 200 ISO, which is significantly above average. So I think Luis Robert is a good home run pick this slate.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by him too. Also, I'm intrigued to know, is it Robert or is it Robert? I just felt like it had to be a fancier spelling or pronounced name, but I always tend to like to put a little more flair on my picks if I can.
Well, mispronouncing guys is kind of a hallmark of doing these sports analysis shows, so I don't mind doing that.
just got to dig your heels in and pick one. And you know what? I'm going to go, Alex dug a little deep, and I'm going to dig deep as well, because that's how much I care. A guy you may not have heard of for a little team in Boston people don't talk much about. JD Martinez, step on down as my dog pick.
Man, how did he come up with that? I feel like I didn't dig deep enough.
No, I mean, it's tough because he's number 2 in the order and he has a 360 ISO versus lefties. So you wouldn't think, oh, JD Martinez, but this guy right here, I'm here for it. I'll ride with the chalk. JD Martinez, one of the highest owned players you'll really ever see in an MLB lineup in a slate with 11 games. But that is the one I'm going with. And other guys too, our boy Terry, our boy El Negro Loco, doing our news reports at Awesemo. Check out the live blogs that he's doing now as well. Doing all the updates at awesemo.com. I'm not keeping track of everybody's Dante. I'm keeping track of everybody who does live before lock. I love you all. I'll figure out a way. I'll work with Josh and see if we could find a way to get everybody's picks in. But just don't be offended, guys. I don't know, man. I don't want to break this sheet. Well, again, of course, if Emac and Jake have them, tag me too. But El Negro Loco's pick, just so you guys have it for prosperity. Rafael Devers, Emac in as well, George Springer, and Terry, our boy T McBee, doing a lot more MLB content. He hopefully carried you guys to some profit windows, some pay windows for KBO over the last few months. But he also got Stanton right, so he wants his credit. So pass on the back. He's correct. And George Springer for Emac, I will put him in, like that pick. All right, let's keep talking pitching here. So the pitcher that I was intimating about before the break, and you can see some data on him if you get that Awesemo Plus membership at awesemo.com/join. Brandon Woodruff didn't throw very deep last year. I guess I have no real reason to assume that changes, but at his price point, I do think he has some strikeout ability. I like the numbers from last year. He really was a guy who, I think because of the limited innings, he really didn't have a ton of ownership for the most part. That is the case tonight, but the projection on him is pretty good. Under 10% ownership projected on DraftKings. I like the spot for Woodruff. I mean, a 29% K rate last year does look pretty good. White Sox team doesn't have a ton of strikeout guys, only 3 guys above league average in strikeouts, but hitters, I think we kind of saw yesterday maybe a little bit cold to start the year, where you have Johnny Cueto fanning guys and looking very elite in his pitching. I think Brandon Woodruff is a guy who's actually good. And if the hitters are a little behind the 8 ball, you can take advantage of a Chicago lineup that is strong, but certainly not infallible by any stretch. Do you feel like Woodruff is a guy you'd go to, or is the lack of depth maybe and not getting a deep start going to be something that affects your choice that way?
Yeah, for sure. I like Woodruff a lot because, as you mentioned, not a guy we feel real confident like being really deep in games, but last year he did have some sort of injury. It's been so long, I can barely remember the specifics, but he was going like 25 batters a game for the first part of the season, got injured or something. So he does have that potential if he's back to full health, which, given it's been like 10 months since we had any baseball, I think that's probably likely. So the Cubs are a little bit of a scary matchup, but they're talking about how their wind's blowing in at Wrigley, and they're not lacking in strikeouts. So I kind of like your call there.
Yeah, I mean, that's my hope. And again, these are my sort of mid-priced guys who I think maybe have some potential here. And I feel like we have to ask the question, because we have seen it work many times in MLB DFS, that sometimes just going against the popular stack works. And we talked about all the reasons why Boston looks like the chalk stack of the day. Well-deserved, very high total for them. Still a quality lineup, despite the fact that they could not keep Mookie Betts for whatever reason. But still, a really tough Boston team. Tommy Malone, not a guy who has historically pitched very deep into games. And I think, if I'm remembering correctly, I feel like last year he sort of settled into a glorified opener role. Is he somebody you would take a stab at a near minimum price or at a minimum price on some of the sites? Because, Boston fails and you have Tommy Malone, you're saving a ton of money, and maybe he gets you enough to do something? Or is that just too much of a dumb play, given the fact that we have a 6.1 point implied run total for Boston?
I kind of like it. I mean, I think that you're not going to find another player at his price point at 4K on DraftKings, at least. On FanDuel and SuperDraft, you probably wouldn't end up on him. But I did end up with a lot of Verlander, contrary to that take I gave earlier in my first batch of lineups. So I got to retract. I'm with the field on Verlander. And part of the reason why is because if you pair him with a guy like Malone, then you can really get a stacked lineup. So that is one direction I'm going today. I mean, you're not going to be crazy about Malone. He's going up against the toughest team on the slate. but maybe that gives you that extra leverage you need to.
Yeah, that's certainly something. Again, all it really takes is Boston failing, and you will see maybe 20% of the field dying on that vine if Tommy Malone somehow is competent and the bullpen can hold up. You are asking a lot for Baltimore, who basically is starting Tommy Malone because John Means is tired, I think is what I saw. Anybody else pitching wise, Alex, who jumps out to you? Because the top stacks tool it feels like it's kind of narrow margins for the differential here between the chance to be a top 2 pitcher and the ownership. But some guys with value here. Giolito is a guy who the DFS community has liked before, had closed last season strong, even though he did kind of have some up and downs. Chris Paddock, a guy too, who going against Arizona, not a crazy lineup either. And Paddock has a younger pitcher who should theoretically be making some improvements. Is there anybody you're kind of shocked by your ownership so far in the crunches you're running?
I honestly have it spread out pretty far, but I do have some of the guys you're mentioning. Like, we talked about Ivaldi and Malone. I have a bunch of them. Giolito, you mentioned. I think he's a good play. One of the guys I'm really on today is Lance Lynn. He had kind of a revival season last year, so not a name that I'm really used to rostering. He's going up against the Rockies. This is a great pitcher's matchup versus German Marquez, so I like both sides. But even though you might expect Texas to be a batter's park, there's a good potential for strikeouts here.
Yeah, and all it takes is that, the park maybe not being what it was with that roof closed. It does seem, all the indications based on Vegas totals and all of that does seem still like the park will be pretty beneficial, but you don't know. You don't know how that'll work out, and probably a chance to take some risk there in that game on the pitchers. Let's keep going through some of the stuff and see if we have any good questions in chat, because we are checking chat as we go. I'm bouncing between a million different windows, so I appreciate all you guys giving some thoughts here. And all right, nothing too great in chat. Weather people are asking about, and I just feel like it's worth hitting on. I don't see, at least in the most recent update of your projections, Alex, that I imported, I didn't see any chances of postponement, but is just to reassure the folks out there, because sometimes people just need a pat on the back to tell them it'll be okay. Anything weather-wise you're seeing that would be a cause for concern, or are you all clear skies, metaphorically speaking?
Yeah, I think I'm feeling pretty good about the weather today. Like yesterday was kind of a wild night with the weather, and people are probably having bad flashbacks. It actually kind of worked out not that bad, where like Jarrett Cole got a complete game, and Scherzer Cole is what you needed. But tonight, I don't think weather will be that much of a factor outside of, West Coast games are going to be lower scoring than East Coast games.
All right, that checks out. And again, make sure you're getting that data. We have about 20 minutes left to walk. So get in at awesemo.com/join and use that promo code Manfred if you want 50% off of your MLB monthly package. You can also use the promo code RESTART if you want to get 50% off of really every sport, every possible sport we can imagine. We have content for it right now. And a lot of it's been fine-tuned over the process of quarantine. So you can jump right in to all the various sports that are going that maybe you wouldn't otherwise. PGA in particular, a lot of fun, even when it does rip your heart out because of Brian Harmon, that son of a bitch. PGA, I have to say, the most emotional investment I've had in a sport, where you can really develop the hatred that burns every day.
I'm glad this isn't a PGA show, because I'm also tilting about the PGA. Like this week in particular, it's like all the guys that are supposed to be the studs missed the cut. What's the deal with that, right?
Dustin Johnson was one I actually avoided and was like, oh, I'm feeling good. And yet, it's all these guys in the 6K range on top. Like Michael Thompson, I don't know who that is besides the Lakers player of yore, and that's not the most helpful. But anyway, point being, there's a lot of great sports out there. So get that package for yourself with the promo code RESTART, 50% off. And let's keep going through some of the finer points here. People asking about Jeff Samardzija, and Arthur Blanda in the YouTube chat spelled it smear. Oh, he spelled it smear jizz on you, which I shouldn't have read out loud, but now I'm already here. So Jeff Samardzija, Alex, a guy who, not necessarily a popular play, or one that, generally has a lot of value.
Well, yeah. I don't think he's even playing, because
I think he was on one of the previously projected pitching lineups, but he's not actually playing. So yeah, I don't even know why that came up. The guy liked the nickname, I guess, would be the reason. Forgot that we had Anderson in the mix. Oh wait, Harmon made the cut. Okay, well I stand corrected.
Oh, wow.
I saw he was like -7 at one point and was climbing, but what a stupid stupid player he is. Anyway, back to baseball. Anybody else pitching wise, Alex, that I feel like, I know you said you have a lot of pretty well spread out exposure. Trying to go through your pitching projections, see if anybody else jumps out that feels worthwhile. Because for me, I'm playing less lineups because of doing the show. That's always my approach, to not eat money. Sorry, Alex.
Well,
I know.
I think that one guy that I'm looking at here is Andrew Heaney. This guy, he just like gets crazy strikeouts. And I think people aren't going to want to pick him because the Angels are a sizable underdog to the Athletics today. That is mostly because the Angels lineup, it has Ohtani and Trout, but it also has Pujols. So, you got some weak bats there. And Frankie Montes is pretty decent. So I like going to Andrew Heaney just because I feel like people might overvalue the money line when they're analyzing these pitchers.
And Heaney is certainly a player who's had some strikeout upside in the past. Guy's got some pretty nasty stuff and can do some damage even in adverse conditions, as we saw when he came back last year. This Oakland A's lineup, I guess the other question too, now that we've kind of gone through, I guess the core players, the stars of the show, so to speak, at stacks and at pitchers, Oakland, Heaney playable, but I think also going against him, not a crazy move given an abundance of righties in that lineup. Heaney last year did struggle with righty power. The strikeout rates are good for him. He was at a 29% K rate last year, but giving up a 200 ISO to righties and 4.6 xFIP compared to a 2.8 for lefties. He did really, as you would expect, he did well against lefties, but righties do get to him occasionally, and the Athletics do have a lot of power, across the board for righties. Is that somebody you would go to here? Do you mind having a taste of both sides? Or the A's, they were kind of a sneaky stack last year, and I'm looking at their price now, and I think they're one I'm going to try to get into my last few lineups I'm making here.
Yeah, I think that the A's bats certainly are a decent play. 4.7. I'll look at what I got here. We got the 5-team total, which is definitely a mark that inspires confidence. The lineup's pretty much the same as what we're used to. So we got some good power in Chapman and Davis and Olsen. So definitely it's upside. We did just get the Giants lineup here, so I'm going to update that in the projections, and then we got the green light to build some lineups here without having to hand edit them after lock. So that's always a good thing.
Let me get that in as well. And now all the lineups are in, as Alex mentioned. So make sure you're checking your preferred lineup areas and getting them all in as we have these guys closed out. I'm going to try to grab this real fast. And also, again, drop your questions in chat and make sure you're taking advantage of the deals over at SuperDraft, the tournaments that they have going on. We've been giving away a bunch of trivia tickets in the YouTube chat, but of course, they have a ton of tournaments going off. And on SuperDraft, there are a lot of great plays that maybe wouldn't be as good of a play on some of the other sites. And, some of the guys, I'll just give you guys a free preview here. Some of the top guys in terms of multiplier who can be useful. Nathan Ivaldi may be a little more useful on SuperDraft. It does seem like there are going to be, where we go, fantasy times multiplier. Ivaldi actually looks like now he's one of the top pitching plays on the slate on SuperDraft, so that's kind of interesting to see. Frankie Montes, also a little more viable, 1.65x multiplier. Jose Barrios, same range as well as Montes, 1.65. Heaney too, guy that Awesemo just mentioned, that Alex just talked about here, 1.65 multiplier. So some interesting pitching moves there. And Alex, I guess a general question for you about SuperDraft that hopefully you can answer while doing your updating and all that. But is there a different strategy at all to you on SuperDraft? Does anything change for the process if somebody's jumping in there for the first time today?
Absolutely. I haven't even figured it out myself yet. But when you have 2 times as many points for certain batters, it doesn't matter if they're like the Giants or like the Orioles. They're going to, if they get 7 runs, that's as good as 14 for the Red Sox. So, that's a huge game changer. I haven't really been able to dig super deep into it, but that's just another reason to play there is because a lot of guys probably aren't familiar with the format, and I think that it's a good opportunity for you if you're paying attention. I do want to mention on the Giants lineup here, the Giants do offer a ton of salary relief. They have Joe McCarthy batting 5th. On DraftKings, he's 2K. They have Jalen Davis at 2.1K batting 8th, and Rob Brantley at 2K batting 9th. I think that if you're looking for a one-off, having any guy that's 2K that's playing and has 2 hands and a bat is going to be not a bad play. So those are definitely guys that I'm going to take a look at.
Yeah, I think it was the catcher yesterday was one of the guys I had in my lineup that did pretty well for the Giants. And yeah, the Giants are a team that does historically get overlooked. They're going against a pitcher in Ross Stripling who's been pretty good or was pretty good last year, 24% K rate, just a 1.1 whip. But it's the beginning part of the season. Things can get a little wonky. And as Alex mentioned, very cheap prices on those guys, really super draft caliber prices for a lot of these guys. Joe McCarthy at 2K is outrageous.
Yeah, I mean, at fifth, 2K is like a price for someone who's like pinch hitting or something. So definitely get in on that. Like maybe he's like going to be too popular though. I don't really know, but it's all about who you can fit around him. He's kind of the Patrick Laird of today's slate.
Patrick, of course. Shout out to our boy Pete Overzet, who hopefully be seeing some more of soon. Let's keep talking about some of the finer points of the slate, Alex. And this is the one that's always tough to put on the spot. Because we talked about the concept of leverage and the concept of Boston being overowned, despite the fact that they look like the best team on the slate by a pretty wide margin. Similar for Cleveland, high price team who has pretty good opportunity going against Danny Duffy. But is there any team here that you feel like, and probably not an outright fade because of baseball, the nature of it? If you guys watch the strategy shows with Josh or the one even this morning, I think they talked about it a little bit. In general, the concept of just getting any team in the mix for baseball can be a move. But is there any team today that you're finding yourself likely to be significantly under on? But I guess perhaps besides the Red Sox potentially.
It's I haven't really dug super deep into it, but I am really low on the Red Sox from lineups I've built so far. Let's see how much JD I got. I got 8% JD Martinez, and we have him for 35% ownership about. So that's definitely a guy or a team that's going to be one of my main stances on today's slate, just because with bats, you really need like 10 plus runs. And even though they have the best odds today, they're still not that great. So I'm comfortable leaving them off my lineup.
Okay, so there you go, the Red Sox. So it's going to be sometimes in baseball you have to make these tough stands, and just because Alex or somebody, any of the guys we have on these shows might say that they're going to be under on the team, it doesn't mean that they don't look good. It doesn't mean that, but that's generally not going to be the way you win tournaments, especially in MLB. You do have to find your places to get different, and that's one the boss man may be taking today, and you can find your own places to get different on the Top Stacks tool, of course, with that Awesemo Plus membership at awesemo.com/join. Use that promo code Manfred, MANFRED, to get yourself half off that first month of an Awesemo Plus package, and also the promo code Restart too, half off all the sports if you want to get that way. Seeing if there's anything new in ownership that's worth bringing to the people. Let's talk through some of these chalk plays. We talked about the stack component. We talked about Verlander. Rob Brantley also coming up because of his very cheap price, at least in the most recent run of ownership. And I know you mentioned them earlier, but I feel like we do have people who tune in regularly. San Diego, also a team you mentioned is going to be pretty overowned as the obvious value stack. And San Diego's a team who I feel like last year I did get a lot of frequently, and they do find ways to disappoint, especially for the full stack. If somebody were to get a lot of the Padres and realize too that they're going to be chalky, it looks like the 5-man stack of Tatis, Machado, and Myers, France looks like that's going to be a pretty highly owned one. But would you go to like a short stack, like a 3-man or even a one-off type of thing for that, Alex? Try to get that leverage or try to get some of that upside without having to roster the full team? Or is it a situation for you where you see San Diego is going to be overowned and you're like, I just don't need any of these guys tonight, I'm just going to go somewhere else?
Yeah, my favorite fade in MLB DFS is the chalk stack that's not good. I mean, it sounds really obvious when you put it like that, right? So it's like if people are just buying them because they're cheap and they're not good, like I'm not down with those generic MLB teams. I go for the name brand.
Yeah, I think that seems fair. You don't ever want to get, we were talking about this actually yesterday in our side action conference call or whatever, group brainstorm thing. Of course, check out that site too, awesemo.com/side action. That's where I've been spending a lot of my time during quarantine, putting up some written content. But we talked about it. I forget what it was in relation to, but just generic foods and how they always have the dumbest names, like Fruit Loops becomes Fruity Circles, and like just terrible. So that is going to be your Padres tonight. They are the Fruity Circles of MLB. That you probably don't want to eat. Looking through the chat, see if there's anything good.
Wait, can we rewind? Because if they're fruity circles, then I might have to change my lineups.
Fruity circles, honestly, I'm sure just as delicious as Fruit Loops, but I want to see a toucan. I want that big beak in my face, baby.
Okay. When you put it that way, it's hard to argue with you.
And shout out our boy Chris Randone in the chat too, doing K-Tov, rocket to the moon, always for K-Tov. So shout out Randone. Always good to see him keeping a good mindset as always. I appreciate that fella. Let's keep going through some of these other fine points, and I am checking your questions, guys. So make sure to keep putting stuff in there if you are in the premium Slack or in the primary YouTube chat. Pedrito PR, asking about the Cardinals on FanDuel. I actually got a little bit of Pittsburgh on DraftKings, did not get any Cardinals on FanDuel in my limited run there. Joe Musgrove, actually a guy I'm getting a little bit more as a pitcher going against the Cardinals, but it is warm and humid in St. Louis today, and that is something generally that leads to a little more production there. And Musgrove, certainly not a world beater and definitely actively kind of bad against lefties, giving up over a 200 ISO last year to left-handed hitters, and they have a couple quality ones here. I think I'd be more inclined for a mini stack just looking at it for St. Louis. I don't know that I love the full one, but do you see value, Alex, in the Cardinals tonight at pretty low ownership?
Definitely. I think earlier in the day, it was funny because we thought they'd be popular, but right now they just kind of look like your run-of-the-mill team. We got a 5-team total they're facing Joe Musgrove, which is a pretty average matchup. Joe Musgrove, it seems like he's always that value pitcher people love to play, so maybe we get a little leverage too. So I do like the Cardinals today.
And Musgrove's solid, and a good amount of strikeouts in their lineup too. 5 guys over league average. That's that 22.9% K rate, but still not anything too crazy for Musgrove here. That would be good. And again, going to be some ownership on him, as Alex mentioned, on some of the sites today. Let's see, we're going through anything else good here in the Slack. Want to make sure I'm not neglecting our guys there. Oh, who's the Paul Blackburn of the night? Our guy McCod is asking, of course, the cheap pitcher who is actively pretty terrible, but could find his way into a tournament winning lineup. That's a fun game we've played here historically for our guy McCod. And Alex, I think for me, it would be Tommy Malone. I just think he's cheap enough that you can make an interesting construction. You can get a high price stack or two in there, a Cleveland, Houston stack, something like that, that could go off. But Alex, if you had to choose your Paul Blackburn award for a guy who's very cheap, actively not good, but could still find his way into a winning lineup at pitcher, do you have one who comes to mind?
Yeah, I think that Tommy Malone is a good choice for that. I'm going to try to hustle and find another one that I think could be a good low price pitcher. I guess the thing is there aren't too many of them today, so they're a little bit hard to come by. I think it's Malone or bust for me. Yeah, I think Brandon Woodruff is like the next slowest, pretty much, aside from Marco Gonzalez. I guess Tyler Anderson could be interesting. I'm not sure if he's going to pitch the full game because he's the kind of replacement starter today, but he's got talent, so I guess he'd be my Tommy Malone. My Paul Blackburn.
I mean, honestly, it could be the Tommy Malone award. Especially if he wins tonight. If he's the one that wins $1 million for you on FanDuel somehow, you've made some very questionable choices making that lineup. But I think Malone's more of a DraftKings play for me, I would think, than a FanDuel one. Maybe SuperDraft if you want to get real weird, but even then, probably not. I'm looking at Tyler Anderson's numbers, and he was not good last year, even despite pitching in San Francisco. Pitching in Colorado. I mean, I guess extra not good because of Colorado. My bad. I got a little dyslexic there. Let's keep going through here to see if there are any good questions. Guys, hit that like button for the stretch run here. Alex needs your support and love more than ever to make sure that he doesn't blow all of his hard-earned winnings on tonight's slate. And I need it because my brain is fried from doing one show. So that's how it goes. Somebody asking too, who are the dong picks? Our boy Greg SJ, shout out Greg, Miss Greg, a good morale guy in a lot of the streams we do here. The picks that we got in, none from Jake Hari today. JD Martinez is my pick, George Springer is Emacs pick, and Luis Robert, the young upstart who people are really excited to see in Chicago this year, is Alex's home run pick. And our boy El Negro Loco, even though I didn't put it down on the sheet because I don't know how to do it without breaking everything, did pick Rafael Devers. So there are your various home run picks from people who you should care about right now. People ask, Jordan Luplow. I always love Jordan Luplow. The ginger assassin, Jordan Luplow, the best nickname I've come up with. Jerry F. asking about Jack Flaherty. And I guess we haven't talked much about him. I love Flaherty last year. I really thought he made some incredible strides, a 30% carry rate on the year, not giving up a lot of hits, just the one whip. But this Pirates lineup, really the issue with them, and part of the reason that I probably played them a little too much last year, these guys don't strike out. They have nobody above a league average strikeout rate. Flaherty stuff is nasty. I mean, the chase rate, maybe not as great as it could be for a guy who's got pretty elite numbers, only a 32% K rate, or a chase rate rather. But still the K rate was there. He got the results. I don't see Flaherty being a guy for me today. I like the price point on DraftKings, but 22% owned, and I'm not sure that he's going to be able to get these guys with any frequency. Guys like Adam Frazier, 12% strikeout rate, Kevin Newman up top, 15%. Just kind of feels like they can extend these series a little bit longer and make it tough on Flaherty to reach an upside. But Alex, do you feel like Flaherty's a guy who's worthwhile? The projection on him is not bad by any stretch. It's just I don't know that he jumps out to me.
Yeah, I think he's a guy that he's got a lot of strikeouts in his repertoire, so definitely have some Flaherty. I think that let me pull up my sheet here. Going against Pittsburgh, the only problem, the reason why I might not be as high as other people is I have them as a very bad strikeout matchup, about 20% less strikeouts than your average team. So that is pretty bad for fantasy. So I'm probably not going to have him quite as much as some other guys.
All right, just 7 minutes left to lock, guys. So make sure you're starting to get those lineups in. Finish up your crunches, export your sheets, do all that you have to do. And make sure to hang out with us right after lock. We're going to be giving out a special promo code, a flash sale, and actually a really, really big deal. The first 50 people who use the promo code will be the one who gets to take this deal. So hang on until after we finish the slate, and we will be giving you guys that special promo code to go check out the deals we have for you. And I'll announce the full deal. I'm just going to really tease it out, but I promise you it's worthwhile. So stick with us through lock, and you'll be able to get that if you haven't taken advantage of our other various offers out there. Let's see, looking through this stuff. All right, Jerry. Hey, shout out to you, Jerry. I don't recall seeing you around here before, but if you're new here, and this goes to any of you, including Jerry, if you're new here, we appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure to tell a friend who cares about baseball, who cares about DFS, who cares about betting, all that stuff. Make sure they are tuned in here and come back. We are doing these shows every day. There will be streams this weekend. NBA coming back and have a ton of content as well. You're going to see some new faces, a lot of your favorite faces, like me and like Josh and like Jake and like Alex, of course, who's here all the time doing all the important behind the scenes stuff. So make sure you're watching all this content for us. Alex, how are you feeling about the crunches? How are they coming along?
Yeah, I'm trying to make some last minute changes now that we got all these lineups in. I do feel like I missed out on some of these one-offs in the lineups I built earlier tonight because I wasn't expecting the Giants to have this much value, but I'm just kind of finalizing my lineups at this point, just throwing in some on SuperDraft, and hopefully I get it all done before 7:05 Eastern, because it's always a race to the bell there.
Yeah, it's very important. But if you are one of those people who's able to finish your lineups, like thankfully I just put in my last one, so I'm okay to go. But if you have that time, take advantage of SuperDraft. Use the promo code Awesemo10. That'll give you some deposit bonuses that I think have changed since the last time I did this ad read, so I don't want to screw it up. There is a $10 free deposit on your first deposit of $10 or more. And if you deposit over $100 or just $100 flat, you'll get yourself $20 free on SuperDraft. So go to superdraft.io and use the promo code Awesemo10. AWESEMO10. As Alex mentioned earlier, a lot less sharks in the waters over at SuperDraft. Just people don't have the time to manage that with the way the slates go and some of the other prize pools out there. But there's a lot of money to be made on SuperDraft. Guys that we work with, guys that we that have been in streams with us have won a lot. I remember NBA in particular was pretty good for some folks out there. So make sure you're checking it out. Superdraft.io. SuperDraft, no limits, more winning. It's all you need in your life. Any final questions, guys? Get them in right now and listen to our boy Jake D, our graphic designer du jour, the man who does a lot of the great content, including the thing you're seeing on the screen right now in our overlay. Hit that like button because it helps us out a bunch on this channel and frankly just makes us feel good about themselves. Anthony Marcus asking, did I lose weight? No, sir, I gained. I just know how to use the camera angles. I got to work them angles. All right. Anything else, Alex, that you're finding in your crunches that does deviate a bit from what you thought initially? Any surprises in there? I always ask Josh, but I feel like now this is the highest level version of that game. Any surprises at all?
So I think one thing I noticed right off the bat when I finalized my lineups is that when I entered the one, I kind of like have a large field, like middle field and small field strategy. And the smaller field I went, the more Verlander I got, which isn't a shocker. But if you're playing those large field tournaments and you're choosing between Verlander or a punt, I think the larger it is, and some of them have $1 million, the smarter it is to maybe go off board there.
Yeah, I think that does make some sense. And as we mentioned, the top pitchers tool is one thing that'll help you identify those inefficiencies / those moments where just guys are a little bit overowned. Doesn't matter about the talent as much as it does just, that fact that these guys are going to have a lot of ownership on them. And Verlander, certainly no exception today. Great pitcher, probably easily the best pitcher on the slate. And, depending upon your worldviews about Shane Bieber, but still one that's going to be very, very highly owned across the industry. A few minutes left to lock, guys. So make sure you got those lineups in just under 3 minutes on my clock, probably a little less by the time you hear that. And I'm trying to think anything else. Alex, what do you think is the thing that blows up on the slate? We have a lot of ownership. I know you're coming under on the Red Sox. We still think the Red Sox will be okay. Like, I don't think they're going to get blown up. I don't think Tommy Malone's going to buzz through them or anything. Is there any chalk tonight that you see blowing up in particularly spectacular fashion?
Man, I honestly, I think it's anyone's game today. Like, the chalk looks pretty good, aside from the Padres, who are the fruity pebbles of tonight's slate. But I don't know. How about you? Do you got any bold fades for us here?
I mean, it's been the Padres for me, but that's also, we do try to avoid the player bias, but I know from my experience with the Padres on a lot of low owned nights, where you feel real smart, definitely don't want them on a chalk night because they don't, even on the low owned nights, they don't make you feel that smart, because then Eric Hosmer strikes out 5 times and everything else goes off. That is the nature of the Padres, though. San Diego, a beautiful city, and one that I wouldn't mind having a homestead in, though shockingly expensive. That's one thing I would add. Let's see, Shane Bieber questioned the chat. I lost to ask. Oh, Ryan Renbohm asking about Shane Bieber on FanDuel. And because we're about to lock, I'll give you this one for free for Shane Bieber. He does project very well on there. He's the number 2 pitcher on the slate behind Justin Verlander. No surprise there. Though probably not far enough ahead of Lance Lynn to not play him on FanDuel. So that would be the one that I would advocate for. Going to get a lot of Lance Lynn, I think, with Awesemo's projections today for the reasons that he mentioned earlier in the show. Make sure you're using them all. Get that membership, awesemo.com/join. Mere seconds left to lock, and stay with us. Again, that promo code's coming the second this flip switches on the slate. So I promise you'll be getting a really good deal at awesemo.com/join coming up right after the slate locks. Let's see. Getting tagged in Slack. Anything good? Cleveland. Yeah, look, Cleveland looks great. Joey Corman owing people tickets. Joey, shameful. Josh Donaldson in a new location. Actually, have we? Yeah, we did not talk about Minnesota at all. And they were a very important team last year because of that insane amount of power. That has not changed this year. If anything, they got even stronger, even more adept at hitting bombs with Donaldson's addition. I did not get any Twins today. I did get a little Giolito. Is this an error in my ways, Alex, to not have any Twins? It does seem like there's a little ownership on Kepler and Donaldson, but the stack itself doesn't look too highly owned.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Twins are probably as good as anyone today. Giolito is a pretty superb pitcher, so that is definitely a factor. I like the fact that it's in guaranteed rate, though, and that they're the away team, so they might get extra inning if they're doing well.
Yeah, a lot of power in Minnesota. Definitely a team to watch if they can even come close to what they did last year. You have in this lineup today, every hitter besides Luis Arias over a 187 ISO in that lineup against righties. A lot of power for these dudes. Nelson Cruz, a very perennial favorite of your old pal Emac. He is also a key part of that too. So yeah, the Twins maybe a little sneaky, and I didn't realize it until now because I'm so overwhelmed with passion for the sport being back. Speaking of, MLB is back, ladies and gentlemen out there. That is what you need to know, because that is in fact the promo code I was talking about earlier is going to be $3 for a membership, an MLB flash sale going on at Awesemo.com/join. If you go over there right now, it'll be $3 for, actually, Joey didn't specify if it was a week or a month or whatever, but it's for a period of time that you can win more than $3 off of it. So make sure you're going to Awesemo.com/join. Use the promo code MLB is back, because MLB is back, and this is the deal we have. The first 50 people will be able to get this offer. After that, you're boned. You just got to take the regular offers like a chump. So get in there, use the promo code MLB is back, and make sure to take advantage of that deal. $3 for a certain period of time. It's just actually 1 minute. You get that's the joke. It's a week. It's a week. Here you go. It is not 1 minute. So make sure to go check that out. Awesemo.com/join. MLB is back. Hit the like button. Play on SuperDraft. SuperDraft.io. Promo code Awesemo10. Awesemo10. Get you $10 with your deposit of $10. And if you put in $100, you'll get yourself $20 free. So that's about as good of a deal as you will find in terms of deposit bonuses in the DFS industry that just doesn't give them out quite like they used to. So make sure to take advantage of that. And I think these are my plugs, Alex. Do you have anything you want to hit on before we call it quits?
Just thanks everyone for supporting the show, and SuperDraft, definitely check them out if you haven't. The promo code Awesemo10, $10 free, and then if you deposit 100 or more, it's 20. So that's always good. And then they have a bunch of overlay pretty much every day. So that's probably your best bet if you want to make some steady money playing some DFS.
Yeah, one of the joys of a new DFS site is they have to do a lot to get people in the door, and SuperDraft does that time and again. You've heard a lot of the deals we've had on here. They've given away free swag. Our guy Ricky over there is a star in terms of trying to make sure people are taken care of and feeling happy about playing on there. And it's just easier to win money. That's just plain and simple. So make sure you're playing on SuperDraft.io. No limits, more winning. And tomorrow, honestly, I don't know who we got. Do we know who's up tomorrow? I want to plug properly.
Saturday, I mean, it's always like you got the day games and the night games, right? So
yeah, it's actually tomorrow's a good one. You got Jake and Josh tomorrow, so that's a fun new pairing. Usually, on the weekends has been Emacs domain, but now tomorrow you'll be getting some Jake and Josh, two of my favorite people, both in general as coworkers and in terms of hosting things. So watch them tomorrow. Check out the strategy show as well tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern time with Emac and Adam Scherer. Of course, shit my money, a genius of a man, and also a great Twitter follow. Make sure you're following him on there. Make sure you're following at Awesemo DFS as well. Follow at Awesemo_com. Follow at Chris Spags. Baseball's back. MLB's back. Do it at Awesemo.com/join and use that promo code. First 50 people, $3 for a week of our MLB package at Awesemo.com/join with the promo code MLB is back. And we'll be back again very soon. So enjoy your nights. Enjoy your weekends. Good luck, guys.